try it. Let's see. Public microphone. Checking one time. Trying to make it sound real regal.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you.
Are you also with Amherst Media?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Damien.
Damien, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Katie.
Katie,
Nice to meet you.
Roger. Nice to meet you, Rodney.
It happened. This was what was said.
Checking.
Words were said.
Public mic.
Thank you so much, Sasha.
You're welcome.
Well, oh, is it kind of low? Yeah, he said these two different mics radiate at operate at a different frequency.
It'll be okay.
That looks like it was this one.
What's that?
Right,
I think that was.
right, because he said they're going to be a little lower than the other ones. Yeah.
So, now I'm just gonna adjust this.
Right.
So, I already started the stream, but it's on the slide, because I programmed it to start at 5:55.
Finally see you in person.
Yes, I know.
So, that's why it needs to start a little bit before.
Before, right, if we didn't have these catastrophic events occur.
It's okay. We're making it work.
Yeah, we are.
Okay, so right now I'm just adjusting it to the level of someone's mouth.
Okay.
Go back there and see if everything
Responsive
else is good.
Okay.
desire to address the root causes of the
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
So they've placed different fellowship locations from here in Massachusetts to Arizona to six.
I walked in with my computer
You put it down.
and I put it down.
Where'd you put it down?
I didn't use the restroom.
You didn't know that?
Are we not taking our seats yet?
Oh, we were just.
Some of us don't know where to sit.
You can sit anywhere
You
you
can
want.
sit wherever you want.
Some of those seats have a lot of extra microphones.
Well, tonight there will be extra. The first meeting is small. Hi, Gabriella. The second meeting is larger.
So where do
So they're
we
setting
tend
up.
to go?
We're
Within one camera span or spread out?
Hi, Roger. We have rarely had the situation where we start with so many microphones that we don't need. So there's no practice. Not, because there's a meeting right after the regional. Yeah, the meeting is right after.
Excellent. I'll go
So I
over
think the
here.
camera is going to pick up all of us.
I'll go corner mode.
It's Roger's bag.
So your kiddo is in sixth grade.
I have one in sixth grade and one in fifth.
At Fort River.
Yeah.
Yeah, just found this out by talking with Bernie. It's like, no way. And then I realized, yeah, my son is healed.
Oh, okay.
So let me know if you hear any bad things about him.
No, I've only heard good or neutral things. I've heard the name mentioned. Oh, thank you. It's great.
Oh, nice.
That's what it's called?
That's what it's called.
Nice.
The color? Yes. But I like the odd names that my
How are you?
That's what you choose based on name and
I'm
not.
all right.
And not color. I mean,
Not
it's
color.
combination. A little bit of
great.
both.
So
And it was way reviewed it.
Right there, I said, you just
the curriculum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
pick it up and took it in.
This last mic here, you have to speak a little louder for. And I clicked that. And if push comes to shove, if you could share this mic with this person, if anything.
Okay.
But this one, they just.
There are different kinds
I
of microphones.
learned today that you all don't have electric sources.
Electricity.
Yes. I don't need it today, but I'm glad I brought this computer as opposed to
I
one
feel like
that
you
doesn't
could
function
sit on
well.
that end.
I'm gonna sit
if
right
you
here.
needed to.
Sounds
Yeah.
good.
It's unbelievable. Someone just probably picked it up and said, didn't know what it was and took it into the office.
And then in terms of internet,
Arts Public Access.
found it.
To accept and continue.
It was in there, in that room. How it got there, I don't know.
These are on all the time.
I'm glad you found it. That is nothing more disconcerting than that. Now, I should have brought my computer. I should have brought my computer. I did not.
And this, and you know, some people, a couple of the region people never bring their computers.
Okay, well,
There are a couple of them. Yeah, I found it in the room. Now ask me how it got there.
I'm gonna.
No one knows. I'll be right back. Hey, how are you? I'm fine. All well, you Oxy? Welcome, not running.
I'm having trouble getting on ARPS Public Access myself.
How's it going?
I'm working on MSN. I think I'm on.
Okay, that's good.
Yep, there's Kevin McCarthy. Here we are.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Just a couple things about the mics, you know, just so that we have good audio. About this far away would be the perfect.
Like where your hand is?
Right, and project your voice into them, you know, because if we have to turn it up, it might give feedback.
Okay,
No, thank you.
And that mic right there is a little lower than the rest of them.
Okay.
So, and this one also.
Great.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Try to get past it.
Can you make it? I can move a little bit. All right.
All right, so,
Did you all get a chance to get outside?
Doug,
I'm gonna run the show here for a
yes,
minute, don't I?
you have to, because there is no way for any of us to do it. So, you can,
I
You
did.
can-
I played a little b-ball.
at will,
Yeah, I got.
because it is 6 o'clock.
It's okay.
Get this thing rolling. Are you ready? We are. Focus.
Good evening. And in this unusual circumstance of the Amherst School Committee not having a chair currently, so I'm going to chair the meeting for a moment until we do the business of the meeting, but I will call us to order at 6:02 p.m. Seeing the presence of quorum, we can do that. And so what we'll do, just to lay out the sort of order of events tonight, welcome to the new members. Thank you for stepping up and being willing to participate with us over the next few months. So what we'll do with regard to this in the reorganization is I'll lead the nomination process for a chair of the Amherst School Committee. We'll take nominations, we'll then vote. Once a chair is selected, then I'll yield the gavel, the metaphorical gavel, to that person. They'll run the remainder of the meeting, and we'll work through the selection of vice chair, secretary, et cetera. And then we'll have the one other agenda item, which is our next meeting. Just want to confirm with everyone if it's a date that's available for everyone, and that's really all there will be to it. Are there any questions as we get started here as to the process or anything like that? If not, I would entertain nominations. Jennifer.
I nominate Irv Rhodes for chair.
Second.
So a motion and a second on that. Are there any other nominations for the chair of the Amherst School Committee? Seeing none, being only one candidate, I will call for a vote on the nomination that's been presented. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, that's unanimous. Irv, you are now chair of the Amherst School Committee. Thank you.
Thank you all. Next order is we got two others that we have to get. First one is for vice chair. And I will entertain nominations.
Point of order, or
What-
I just wanted to ask if you could describe the two remaining positions?
All right, there's the vice chair and the secretary. Now, just to understand that these three positions are important, the chair and the vice chair and the secretary, because those three also will be comprised Union 26, which is the superintendent's union, which we will get into at some point in time. So I will just start out by nominating Jennifer as vice chair.
Second.
What?
Second.
Second? Any other nominations? Seeing none, come to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? None, it's unanimous. All right, so our next order of business is the next school committee meeting. By the
need a
way,
secretary, don't we?
oh, yeah. Oh, shoot. Come on, Eric, let's get this done. So I will entertain nominations for secretary. Yes, Jennifer.
I nominate Katie Lasdowski for secretary.
Second. Any other nominations? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So Katie is the new secretary. Those are the three.
Okay.
When we last met, there was a schedule for all the upcoming meetings.
That's correct.
All right, and has that schedule been published at all?
Not fully just yet because of, waiting to sort of have this conversation. But I will say this, Pelham is, just if I can
Right, go
paint a
ahead.
little bit of the picture here. So Pelham School Committee was scheduled to be on the 10th. And so I asked them if they'd be willing to move their meeting. They're actually going to have their meeting this Thursday evening. And that opens up the 10th.
Point of order, sorry.
Yep.
Can we just pause real fast? We're having complications with the live feed.
Sure. I mean, sorry, I shouldn't say sure, sorry. Didn't speak on behalf of the chair, sorry.
While we wait, am I allowed to ask for names?
Yes, go ahead and ask.
Who's the dubs? Hello. And you are Weaver?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now I know your business and what I'm doing. I'm Sasha.
Thank you.
I know you're welcome.
So Sasha hides behind. I actually didn't know she was there. Hi, Sasha.
All right, we're
Those-
good.
Yeah, those are.
So where were we?
Oh, I was just indicating that Pelham moved a meeting to Thursday of this week, which opens up the 10th. And then, because Amherst hasn't had a meeting in September, really, that offers an opportunity for you guys to meet on the 10th. And then your regularly sort of scheduled meeting will be the 24th. And then we'll get on a much more regular cycle and we'll share out the full set of dates. But I would suggest, but I'll speak with the chair about this, about topics for that meeting, but it'll be, there's a fair number of things to just kind of catch up on as far as
Right, this is,
basic business stuff, so that's most of that meeting,
right.
I think. But
Well, I think, there are two things. One, if we're going to be having this meeting on the 10th, and this is our only chance to talk about any possible agenda items. And I would like to ask the rest of the school committee, are there any agenda items that you would wish to see on this next meeting on October the 10th?
Point of order, is there no public comment at this particular meeting?
No, there was none scheduled for this particular meeting. Yes, Jennifer.
So off the top of my head, an update from the elementary school building committee. And I will have warrants to report, so if we could make sure to put warrants on there.
Anything else?
I'd like to see an update on the Title IX investigation, where it stands.
If it's available, yes.
Point of order. So you're talking about the next meeting of the Amherst School Committee.
Amherst.
So I don't know that the Title IX report is under the purview or appropriate for the Amherst School Committee?
No, it isn't. However, it is appropriate if a school committee member asks if there is any update on it, for us to say, yeah, there's an no. But I guess for me, it is of importance for this committee. However, Jennifer, that's a good point. It doesn't. It would be better just to save it for the regional school committee meeting, which will be coming up, and you can ask for that to be on the next regional school committee agenda,
Okay.
rather than this one.
So I withdraw that request.
Yes, sir.
Will there be opportunity to add to the agenda prior to the 48-hour deadline, or is this the sole time when we can?
No, I
You're just
will
starting the
always
agenda.
entertain
Okay.
via our, you can email me with suggestions, as long as it is suggestions for an item, but nothing in terms of an opinion or et cetera, like that.
Thank you.
Any other? Anything else? Since we have Glenn Kuchar here, and we have 3 new members who are unelected, I did ask the field director this question in relationship to training requirements, because the law states that all new school committee members within a certain period of time should undergo training. The feedback that I got from, I can remember, indicated that the next training that would be available wouldn't be until, January or February. However, there was an MASC conference where training would be available. Now, the other question I have, are there any other opportunities for this to happen, Glenn, other than MASC?
Mr. Chairman, there are a couple of options. We often come out at the invitation of the district to do a customized expedited orientation where you might ask some of the nearby districts if they'd like to participate with you, and then we would set something up sooner. Or if you'd like to come to the conference on Friday of the conference week, we are running the full new member orientation, and you don't have to pay to attend the orientation.
Do you have the date of that?
It is the Friday following Election Day. So you can call us and let us know what works, but if you wanted to set up something special just for Amherst or Amherst and Pelham or maybe some of the nearby towns, we could work with you to do that.
All right. I do have that date somewhere in terms of that conference.
That would be the 10th.
Yeah. Now, so the other thing, Glenn, the reason I'm referring to Glenn is the director. He's He's from Massachusetts Association for School Committees. And so when I asked that question of the field director, she indicated that technically, yes, the new members need to take the training. So the only question I had was, well, if you go to the conference on that particular day, yes, the training is free. Would the school committee, district school committee, pick up travel costs?
Short answer to that is yes, we usually do. So we would be, if members wanted to go and needed to pick up, reimbursement for mileage, that sort of thing, absolutely.
All right. Yes.
November 10th would be basically halfway through the term that we have. We're here in a short term, so I personally would find it more useful to have the orientation sooner if that's at all possible. Also because I teach, it's very difficult to get away on a Friday.
Sure. If I may.
Yeah.
So I can reach out to MASC and see what their availability is and then connect with you guys, and we'll, much like we did, we're going to do a little bit about local stuff on Friday morning with you all, so thank you for making yourselves available that day, but we can certainly connect with them and see what options are available and see if we can coordinate schedules and do that, because I know besides yourselves, there's a member at Pelham, there's some somewhat newer members in our regional group as well that may be wanting to do that, so we'll see what we can do and organize that. But as a fallback, you've got the 10th of November as an option, but hopefully sooner if you're interested. So it sounds like everybody is. They're nodding along, so I'm going to presume you are. So
Yes.
I'll work on getting that scheduled.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else? Jennifer?
We had a request from the town manager to designate a member from the school committee to be on the elementary school building committee. It's not on the agenda, and my understanding is it's not necessarily something we need to vote on. So maybe if with the chair's permission, if we could just discuss it and maybe come to consensus on it.
Yes.
I can describe it if you'd like.
Yeah,
Please.
yeah. Please, go ahead and describe it. Obviously, this is one of our more important issues that we are facing, and having someone on the school building committee is very important.
Great. So the elementary school building committee is a building committee that's been in place for several years, I believe, who is tasked with overseeing the elementary school building project. And the committee is made up of various stakeholders in the community and in town government, and the Amherst School Committee had a member on that represented the school committee on the school building committee. So, and since that member has resigned, we need to designate a replacement person. I was informed by Mr. Bockelman that they meet Friday mornings at 8:30, which was just by consensus of the existing committee. I don't think it's every Friday. I could be wrong. I don't think it's every Friday, but they do meet Friday mornings. I don't know that any big decisions are going to come before the committee, the school building committee, in this calendar year. But it's still good to have representation on that committee, and that the person who's the Amherst School Committee representative on that committee can report back to this committee about how the process is going.
Are those meetings on Zoom or in
I
person?
believe they are on Zoom.
If I may.
Go ahead.
Again, actually, they had to reschedule a meeting, and it happens to be on Thursday of this week, so it's actually day after tomorrow, and I'm looking at the notice, but it may be just my particular entry in my calendar that I didn't have a link to meeting, but I think they do them electronically just because it's convenient for a size group that it is. I can confirm that, but it would be if someone is by consensus chosen. The earliest is it's an 8:30 meeting, Thursday the 5th.
Is the idea to choose someone this evening for that?
Yes, the idea is to do that.
I might nominate Roger, given his experience in the schools.
Sounds good to me.
I second that. I don't know that it requires a vote, but it's, or if it's up to you.
Yeah, we don't need to vote on it.
Okay, they meet virtually. So there's no in-person.
I haven't gone to one yet, so I don't.
Okay,
I don't know for sure,
send me the
but I can
link.
get you an answer to that
Yeah,
probably
send me the
tomorrow.
link. Okay.
This will come up again and again as we go down this pathway. I would ask that anyone who takes on a position such as Roger, or when we do other meetings where there are going to have to be people dealing with the budget committee and superintendent evaluation, superintendent search committee, that given the short-term nature, that you would agree to then pass on your information and knowledge
True.
to the incoming people. All right. So, is there any other business? Any other thing? Since we didn't call this meeting to order, because we weren't a school committee, now that we are a school committee, I will ask to have a vote to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second? All those in favor, I could ask.
All right.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
You know, the dramatic pause until the next meeting.
6:30. And
Right, 326?
we are,
You don't have it.
yeah, we're not, Union 26 is not yet. Because Margaret isn't here and the two Pelham people are, well,
It's just William.
William. It's only William and Margaret? That's right, it's William, Margaret, and Tillman.
No, someone is,
But there, isn't there,
it was Tom.
it was Tom Fanning, and he's not there. So who,
So we have not met yet.
Gabriella,
Present.
Katie,
Present.
Jennifer,
Present.
and myself, Irv, present. We are now, wait, Roger is present. Well,
There you go. This is
Roger,
new.
that's right.
Seeing the presence of a quorum for the Pelham, call the Pelham Elementary School Committee to order. William,
Present.
Sarah Bess,
Present.
and Margaret present.
So for the reading of call to order at also 6:33 PM.
Who's on the, and then Union 26, seeing the presence of a quorum. So, would you please answer? Margaret?
Margaret here.
William here.
William? And who's the third one? There's no third. Jennifer? No, Jennifer's, well, now it would be, yes, Jennifer is now one, and also Katie, Union 26.
Present.
Yes, and Katie,
Present.
thank you, and myself. We'll get there.
So the first order of business is a presentation from our friends at MASC. Oh, sorry, not loud enough. About how to find a new superintendent. So I would like to welcome you. If you guys want to come sit up here and can present away.
Mr. Chairman, members of the school committee, I'm Glenn Kuchar, the executive director of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. With me is Liz LaFont, who is our field director for Western Massachusetts, largely Berkshire County and everything east of the Connecticut River, and then sometimes occasionally west of the Connecticut River as well. So, let me give you a quick overview of the superintendent search process. First of all, the law is very broad about what you are permitted to do. You must appoint the superintendent at a public meeting. If it's on your agenda, which it is, you could appoint me right now. It might not go over well with the community, but you have that right. Most school committees elect to cast a wide net. In doing so, there are some things that you think about, and that's why we presented this guide for you. If you're looking for a superintendent, you want to think about, why you have a vacancy, what kind of vacancy you're looking for. This is an interesting district because it is a region and two independent school districts under the region. So the superintendent is actually...
It's 3 districts.
And a union, yeah.
And okay, so the superintendent has got some complicated parliamentary procedures to understand. You do have a legitimately open vacancy, and you might wish to cast a wide net to see whether people would be interested in applying. Now, what you have going for you as a district that is to your advantage is that Amherst is a known community. The 5 College area is very well known throughout Massachusetts and the Northeast. The community has in my sense, there's always been a great quality of life and a lot of arts and enrichment and highways that will get you maybe where you want to go quickly. I would say this would be a very desirable position for somebody who wanted to be a superintendent and who would be willing to step in and bring things together. Districts need to think about what it is they want from a superintendent. Some districts need somebody to build schools. Some are in financial crisis. Some have issues around leadership. Some have issues around community relations. You'll need to define what it is that you would expect from your superintendent so that when the wide net is cast, the potential pool of candidates will know I may be really well suited for this or I may not be well suited for this district. The searching these days is largely done with technology in that in the old days, like 2016 maybe, we would have printed brochures for districts and we would have mailed them, US mail, to recruiting lists. In addition to all of the other electronic stuff we have. Now the brochures are done electronically. They're pasted on websites. Our website, as a member district, MASC will post your notice of vacancy and all the related material to it as a courtesy to our members. The Superintendent's Association will do the same thing. Most people looking for a superintendency will regularly browse the websites of the state school boards associations. And we are in contact with all of the state school boards associations, some of which are associated with the National School Boards Association and others which are not. But the National Alliance of Superintendent Searchers represents everybody, and for no cost at all, you can produce a brochure, circulate it to hundreds of potential applicants. And most applicants will apply electronically for your review. An interesting element to this is that the Attorney General does not allow the school committee to act as its own initial screening and search committee if the school committee wishes to have an initial confidential review and interview process. The initial interview process and resume review is critical for many candidates. For a number of reasons, candidates appreciate privacy until the finalist stage. Some of it for obvious reasons. If you're in a district, you don't necessarily want everyone to know that you might be leaving. Also, I don't know how many of you are educators or how many of you have been administrators, but you know, if you've ever been a principal or a coach or an assistant superintendent or a superintendent, chances are you said no to someone who didn't want to hear the word no. Chances are you might have suspended a student from school or counseled somebody out of a profession. Those people don't always appreciate it, but now through the miracle of the internet, they can find out where you are at any given moment. So if it was named publicly that persons X, Y, and Z were candidates in Amherst, and that wicked superintendent suspended my child, the athlete, in season during season, and I want to make sure that superintendent never works again, I might get on the phone and start undermining that candidate's ability. So confidentiality is very important. We have provided you, as a member district, with a list of some of the decision criteria that districts use, some of the special skills that districts are looking for. You may have some of them on your own. We suggest that you think about that you create a search committee. Now, you have 3 different committees. So you could have a minority of the committee may serve on the search committee and still have confidentiality. So Amherst might have 2 people, Pelham might have 1 person, Amherst Pelham Regional might have another couple of people. You might figure out an interesting way to get more people involved. We encourage school committee members to serve on the search committee. We encourage the chairs of the school committees to sit on the search committee because the processes go much more smoothly if the leadership of the school committee is part of the process. Now, I hope that doesn't anger any of the chairs who were hoping that they could delegate that responsibility, but I will say that where the chairs are on the search committee and where school committee members serve, you are much less likely to have the search go sideways. People will cooperate. We have a lot of resources for districts that might like to manage the search themselves. We have model questions, we have model interviews, we have dozens of sample interviews that have taken place. We revise our question database regularly. We're always on the end of the phone if you need help with a question, a parliamentary question, a legal question, whatever it might be. And many districts are able to manage the search themselves using the internal resources. There are no short supply of people who will do professional searches for you for a fee, and we can tell you who they all are, so that if you wanted to hire a firm to do this for you, you could do that. I will tell you that the volume of candidates that you get will be more a reflection of the district, the desirability of the district, and people who in the area are looking for a superintendency than a matter of who you hire to do your recruiting for you. There are lots of really good recruiting databases. There are organizations out there that represent cohorts of candidates, focus on diversity if you prioritize that for your search. and there are lots of people who can assist you in identifying anti-bias strategies to make sure that your search is thorough and diligent. And if you start before the year gets too late, you can actually finish your search before the end of the year, or maybe before January is over, and have somebody lined up to take your superintendency at the end of the academic year. So that's the general summary of how that works, and we would welcome any questions. Liz has done a number of searches. I have done 85 of them over the course of 25 years. Liz has done many out here in Western Massachusetts.
Jennifer?
Oh, sorry, thanks. I have two questions. First, you mentioned the candidates being confidential, which I assume you mean at first. Because at some point, the finalist names, the few number of finalist names will be public.
Correct.
Yeah.
The candidates want to make sure that their applications can be filed confidentially. We create, as a courtesy to our members, we create a cloud and place the applications in the cloud as soon as they come in. And then the members of the search committee would have access to the cloud so they can watch what's drifting in. Just as a matter of superintendent search trivia, the vast majority of applicants come in the last week. People prepare their applications, but we've had situations where 30 applicants applied and 28 of them were on Thursday and Friday of the last week.
Gotcha.
It's a procrastinating lot. I don't know why, but
They're probably busy. I have a second question, which is, can you give us a ballpark estimate of like how much could we expect to spend for a full service recruiting or search firm? I know you can't give us a number, but just like, what's the ballpark we're talking about?
I would say you could spend anywhere from $10,500 to $60,000 or $70,000. And I would tell you that money is not a factor in the size of the pool that you will receive. So I would suggest that when you think about what you do, you're going to want somebody who will be here, be present, and available to you, and that you contract for the services that you want. I just want to add in, we are absolutely not here selling anything, but Amherst has been paying us dues for almost 80 years. And part of the dues bill goes to supporting the cost of member services. So the price of a search can sometimes reflect the fact that you're a member of an organization versus you're not.
Thank you.
That's a segue into my question. MASC can serve as and has served as a search firm, is that correct?
Yes.
That's what I thought, right.
Tillman?
In your experience, has it happened that a search fails? And if so, what are the typical reasons why it fails?
Okay. First of all, you should make sure that whoever is helping you doesn't get paid until a contract is signed with the superintendent satisfactory to you. You don't want to be at risk. Sometimes searches fail because the candidates that you liked and had as finalists took jobs elsewhere. Sometimes timing runs out. Could be searches do fail, and I have restarted a half a dozen over the course of my life. I'm actually, Waltham is restarted because their finalist candidates withdrew and the committee couldn't come to consensus about who they liked.
I had one in Central Mass last year that started very late and did not like any of the candidates in the semifinalist phase and agreed to start again in September. They hired somebody internally as their interim, and as of today, they're feeling real confident about that interim going forward. So never underestimate the power of an interim as, or someone internally, as your superintendent going forward, you should never overlook that. Also, and I think Glenn didn't say this, but he would agree with me, that if candidates, oftentimes candidates wait because they talk amongst themselves, and they may be waiting to hear who's applied, and to hear if there is a strong internal in the race.
And sometimes they deal with the school committee, and they discover that maybe there's some financial trouble that wasn't clear, or there's litigation, or whatever there might be, and sometimes they will just say, uh-oh, this is not something I want to deal with.
Thank you.
I think Anna was next.
So I was wondering how far of a reach MASC has in their recruiting pool. So if we wanted to do a national search versus like a statewide search or even a New England search, would that be something that could be handled by MASC, or was that something that you would recommend going with a more national firm?
It can be handled by a number of different organizations. It's not, a national search now involves social media nationally, talking to the state school boards associations nationally, talking to the organizations that train and represent special constituencies for the superintendency, and they're all very easy to reach. You can reach them without expense, and you can reach their candidates easily. So a national search is not that particularly difficult. And some people who do the national searches represent a national stable of candidates that they will put forward where they are. So, yes, we have 85,000 hits a year on our superintendent search page. The Superintendents Association, and they post everything, all positions in districts. They have about 1 million hits a year. So people see your vacancy, whether you pay somebody to do it or not. Now, when they call, people call the State School Boards Association all year long and say, we want to come back east, or the other adult in the household just got a faculty offer at one of the 5 colleges, and we're going to relocate, so I'm ready to go. People out of state who want to come to Massachusetts generally want to come because they want to come back, or sadly they've retired in another state and they say, well, I need to come back and go to that Amherst place, nice college town. I'll do that for 3 years. How hard could it be? And they don't realize that being a superintendent in Massachusetts is a very challenging position. So we don't get a lot of out-of-state candidates, but we do get some that are referred to us as well. And if they're referred to us and someone else is doing your search, we simply refer them to you. Anybody that comes into us, we refer to the district immediately, no matter what you do. So you get that benefit regardless of who you choose to help.
Katie?
Thank you. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about the number of districts you work with and how many tend to use your services. There's a certain percent of districts that use your services, and then also in terms of your, I guess, bandwidth, like if someone were to work with you, what are you able to provide in terms of your staffing and ability to be accessible and guide us through this process? Like, how many people on your staff are designated just for this process?
We have the staffing capacity to be present at every phase of your search, live and in person, which most school committees tend to want, not because you need to be supervised, but because you never know when you're going to need some guidance. So we do have the staffing capacity. Last year, we completed 15 full superintendent searches, and we provided technical assistance to a half a dozen other districts that did their own search. They did it themselves with the resources that they had. I will tell you, the earlier you get started, the better the candidates tend to be. So whatever you do, I would suggest that you move expeditiously. Remember the old Hills Brothers coffee commercials when somebody said, "We get the best beans, what do you do with all the other ones?" And the broker says, "I just sell them to somebody else." And that's not where you wanna be.
I almost said Jessica, I'm so sorry. Jennifer.
Can you talk about what you all are aware of in terms of the number of superintendent searches that are active right now or will be active for the 24-25 academic year? And is that a lot compared to usual?
Most of the searches occur because somebody has retired. Very few superintendents get fired. Some of them change careers. So what happens in Massachusetts is, you know, if you start teaching right out of college, at age 57, you're gonna get 80% of your salary as a pension. So many superintendents will retire quickly at 57, 58, or 59, and that creates vacancies. At the moment, I could list for you probably 8 to 10 districts that we know are looking for superintendents. Many of those districts that are vacant will promote someone who's been groomed for the superintendency from within. And others will consider the internal candidates along with others. It depends on what the community demands. And in many of our districts, the assistant superintendents or the high school principals are very popular, they're very well known, the superintendent has given them exposure and responsibilities, so when they leave, say, you know, I'm announcing I'm leaving, the school committee will then take a motion and immediately appoint the next superintendent right there. And the communities are usually fine with that if the district is doing well. So we might have 45 superintendents turning over in a year, but 15 or 20 of them won't involve searches because they'll involve quick internal promotions.
Katie, going back to your statement about that there would be someone who would be with us for all steps of the process. Would that be the same consistent person, or would it just be a representative?
That would be the same consistent person.
So someone who could get to know our district?
Unless sometimes there's a schedule complication and we back each other up.
We can't hear you on this mic.
Oh, sure.
Could you just bring it closer to you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
We're being broadcast on Amherst Media.
I'm sorry.
So to Glenn's point, we do cover for one another, which often brings me to this side of the Connecticut River. And my colleague in Central Mass will often come into Western Mass and cover for me. Glenn's been known to come out here as well, just because I think he likes
My
driving
entire
the
wardrobe comes from
turnpike.
the outlet malls out in Western Massachusetts.
We talk to one another and prepare the person subbing for what's going on.
Thank you. Anna?
So because we're a regional district with a lot of, it's sort of a complicated district, are there other states that have a similar situation, or is this something pretty unique to Massachusetts? And then does that sort of give you a lean towards where you want to look for your superintendent?
There are some things that stun people from other states. In Massachusetts, the school district is usually the school department of municipal government. That is unusual. In the United States, most school districts are independent governance units that raise, a candidate from out of state, the Midwest, will be happy to come and not have to sell a bond issue every year to pay their school bills. So the complication is that frequently in Massachusetts, the mayor of the city or the chair of a town council is represented on the school committee. And in the rest of the country, the school boards, they're not used to that. However, there are many independent school districts that cover multiple towns. Vermont has many of them. Maine and New Hampshire has many of them. They're called SAUs, Unified School Associations, whatever they're called. Whoops, sorry, Unified School Associations And it's unusual. It's rare in Connecticut and it's rare in Rhode Island. But in many parts of the country, you'll see multiple towns with their own separate town government, and then you'll see a school district that's independent of all of that. But regional schools have regional issues that other schools don't. So there are people with experience in regions who would be attracted for that additional reason.
Katie?
Do you have any, I mean, hiring is one thing, but do you have any information about the retention of the superintendents that you've hired and placed in terms of their longevity at a district?
Well, our people in Massachusetts tend not to leave and tend not to move as much. There's a Mike Royko's line, "Why would I travel? I'm already here," kind of thing. The average superintendent in Massachusetts stays for 4.5 years.
At a particular district? You're saying in the state or at a district in particular?
In the district where they are. And mostly they depart for a retirement. Some of our superintendents will stay a really long time. Some of them say they will stay a long time and leave after 3 or 4 years. And I would say to you, one of the things you want to be sure that you pose as a question to any candidates that you're talking to is to look them in the eye and say, if your superintendency works out well, will you still be here in 5 years? And then those of you who've been middle school parents and can tell whether someone's lying just by looking at them, you look them right in the eye, and that's why it's always good. Some of our best search committee members are police chiefs. They're really good. They know the other chiefs, they get lots of good background information, and they can really help you understand. They just have that ability to.
They do like to chair the search committee, so we'll warn you about that.
And I guess, just to follow up, my reason for that question is how much effort do you put in terms of, is the goal just to find a superintendent, or is the goal to find a superintendent who has a good fit or a good match with the district?
Yeah, so that's the goal of every search. We certainly, we work for school committees, that's why we exist. We don't work for the Superintendent's Association. And the best superintendent is a good fit for the community, someone who's willing to build relationships with school committee members and build an effective leadership and governance team.
Now, there are some districts, I mean, we don't want to do these searches over again.
No.
We want people to come and stay for a long time, and we want our members to be happy with the services they get, because you have the ability to walk away and not be associated with us. So there's always that concern, and if a search doesn't, if a superintendent doesn't stay for the 3rd year, we do it over again, and you should expect that from anybody. They should be here for more than 2 years, and if they're not, I mean, if someone, God forbid, someone could have a sad ending to their superintendency and not be able to continue. But if someone stays for 2 years and says, "Oh, by the way, actually this happened in one of our Western Massachusetts districts,
Berkshire County, yeah, we
came
did
and
that.
said, I'm here 2 years, but you know what, I just got a better offer back in Connecticut, so it's been swell." So that was a do-over for us. And we don't want that to happen to anybody. And remember, some of our best helpers on the reference side, who will call other school board members in other states and other districts, are members of the school committee. Your colleagues will be very truthful with you in telling you whether this is somebody that you're interested in.
Any more questions?
So, think about what your options are, and think about what you'd like to do. You've got time, because it's very early in the year, the prime time to start would be, you know, prior to the beginning of November, because other searches have started elsewhere and they'll be looking at candidates.
Yeah, and you bump into the holiday season, which sets your schedule off a bit.
Sorry,
Yep.
you said both we're starting early, but also that we should start before November. But it is October.
It's October, yeah.
So are we like right on track, or are we early, or like, when you say start in November, what do you mean by start?
I would say you would want to start advertising your vacancy soon. And that doesn't take a lot of effort. We've got samples of materials that you've used before. Update those materials, indicate what your decision criteria would be, get a couple of people together to work with, you know, on what your decision criteria would be, so that you can put it out to the universe, candidates, quickly, and people will see it.
Okay, thank you.
And give them 4 or 5 weeks to apply, and then start working immediately with the search committee, getting them oriented and trained, so that they will be able to select candidates based on your priorities, interview them, and then make recommendations to you.
Gabriella?
Looking at the timeline, the model timeline you've got on the last page of your handout, have you actually worked with committees on this timeline, or is this aspirational?
No, it's definitely aspirational, but this can work. How, the amount of time that you spend is defined by how much process you need, or how much process you want, and how many people you have on a search committee. If you have a 20-person search committee, those are a lot of schedules to reconcile, because you need to be at an orientation, you need to be able to review the applications and decide, you need to do the initial interviewing and make recommendations. And depending upon the number of people and the amount of process that's required, that can take a longer period. Now, your community is going to want to give you feedback. So part of the search process should involve meetings with your faculty, meetings with the community to give them a chance to give you feedback. And what we found is that while people don't necessarily want to come out at night as they used to, I mean, you think of it, in 2023, all the adults in the household are generally very busy during the day, and by the end of the day, the last thing they want to do is go to another evening meeting. Although being from Cambridge, Massachusetts, I have been told that Amherst and Cambridge are places where people would rather go to a meeting than go to dinner. I don't know whether that's true, but it's been.
What kind of rumor is that?
So you could speed that up. There are processes that can take a very long time. If you decide to group edit your interview questions and get days for feedback, that can take time. If you need to have, there are some districts that want to have a screening committee, then an interview committee, 2 separate committees, 2 separate processes. Those take time. But if you wanted to expedite things, you could be done by the end of the year or the end of January.
That's a commitment to expediting the process.
Gabriella?
Follow-up question, you mentioned that a large committee would be difficult because of the schedules. What, in your experience, has been an ideal number for the search committee? Taking into account broad representation of a varied community as well as efficiency.
I'm thinking 9, which works, but probably wouldn't work in a community with 3 different school committees and a lot of interest in the schools. I've worked with a group as large as 27.
It's hard.
I would say, you know, and there are some constituencies that you really can't exclude. So you may have some parent advisory council, you have your PTA, special education pack, You might have your English language learners pack, you might have other constituencies within the community that want to be involved. So sometimes they start by saying, good, let's try to keep it at 9 or 11, and they end up with 15 or 17, sometimes more. So 17 is the high end of normal, but it allows everybody to have an opportunity to ask a question. Usually if you interview somebody for 75 minutes, you can get 17 questions in if the chair expedites the meeting and moves people along.
Yes. Glenn, you just used an incredible term there, the high end of normal. So one would ask the question, what is normal? And
I'd say the average is probably 11 to 13, maybe.
right, and no, I can come back. There is something else that needs to be said. So, go ahead.
Were there any other questions? Nope. Well, thank you both so much for coming out.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Linda, thank you for your response, by the way. Liz, I mean, thank you for your response to my written communication.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome. That's what we do.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
May
you.
not be good, but we're fast.
I was gonna say, we may not be fast, but
But
we're
we're
good.
good, yeah.
Yes, just one, because for the new members, we have established at the last meeting a subcommittee who is charged with forming the search committee. And the person who's heading that up is Jennifer at this point in time.
Oh, okay, well,
Actually, before you go, we do have Kathy Mazer here that has worked within the district before. If we have some history, if you could give us a little bit of history of what's worked, like for us specifically in the past, if you don't mind.
But you have to step to the mic.
Yeah.
It's been a minute since I've done this. I've conducted a number of searches supporting either an external consultant or when the choice of the school committee has been to conduct the search internally. So I have a number of models of how we've done this. We have had an extensive search by a national committee, which was successful. I think the individual stayed a couple of years, 2 or 3 or 4 years. And my experience, quite frankly, is that people need to want to be here. Something needs to draw them here to our community, whether they've lived here before, grew up here before, worked here at some point. Sometimes it involves relationships, they've married somebody or know someone, family, whatever. Those have largely been successful, and the longer term, people stay a longer bit of time when that happens. Some of the searches, one search in particular, I was just thinking, so the school committee decided to go with a national search firm, and they did an extensive profile development of the candidate that the community was interested in. They did focus groups with select boards, finance committees, AEF, the school councils, PGOs, ELL parents, as were mentioned, and social justice groups as well. So that's an approach, certainly, and that the school committee used all the focus group feedback in order to develop the profile of the individual they were looking to hire. And then the search really was launched at that point. So there's a number of ways to do that. I'm happy to sit down with your subcommittee, if that's helpful, and go over all of these things so you can make the decisions as you see fit.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I think, Jennifer, are you heading up our next?
sure, I can talk about the next agenda item. So if you wouldn't mind, there's an attachment on the Superintendent Search Subcommittee agenda item, which is a memo that the Superintendent Search Subcommittee developed to present to the joint committee. So, as Irv mentioned, at the last joint meeting of the Regional School Committee in Union 26, the two bodies voted to create this superintendent search subcommittee. It is made up of William Schur, Margaret Stancer, Anna Hurd, and me. We had our first meeting last week. We met for an hour, and we discussed a few things that we wanted to bring back to the joint committees. And all of the items here are, none of this is written in stone. The subcommittee we don't feel it's our job to make any decisions, but rather to discuss, do the legwork and research, and then present ideas and recommendations to the joint committees. So, if we could just go through this document, that would be great. So the first thing we discussed is a high-level timeline. So I'm glad to see that this kind of lines up with what our MASC friends talked about. Not exactly, but it sort of does. So these are just like high-level overall categories. So this month in October, we would talk about, or we would hire a search or recruiting firm, and I'm going to talk about that later. And then as well, determine the composition and membership of the search committee, so that we would take the month of October to do that. In November, the search committee would have their first meeting. We would hold community sessions to collect input on what the community is looking for in a superintendent. And then the job description would be developed and finalized in November, with the aim to have the job posted December 1st. So again, these are all recommendations. None of this is written in stone. Glenn said something like the length of the process is going to depend on how much process do we want or need. And I'm going to say, I think given where our districts are, I think that I don't want to overload us with process, but I think that more community input, more time to hear from the public, from our families and from our staff, the better. Even if it means we take an extra beat to develop a profile or develop a job description. I think more community input is going to be better, even if that means it takes a little while longer. Okay, so maybe we have the job posted by December 1st. Then we take the month of December for the search committee to review the applications, determine the first round candidates, and conduct screening interviews. And again, maybe some of this is I don't know, unreasonable given timing, but this is what we came up with. Then in January, the search committee, so there would be like an initial round of applications and initial screening interviews, and then a second round of interviews. So maybe like, 20 people apply, we do screening interviews with 10, and then second round interviews with maybe 5. I'm just making up numbers here. So January would be second round candidates, February would be January would be second round interviews and decide on finalists, maybe 3 finalists. I don't know. I'm making up numbers. Then those 3 finalists would come for community sessions, building tours, and public interviews with the joint committees, however many finalists we come up with the aim of making an offer to our preferred candidate on March 1st. Then we sort of planned in a month to negotiate with the finalist, or if our preferred finalist declines, so we would have some time to talk about what to do next. And then we have the finalist accepting the offer, hopefully by April 1st, and with the goal of that person starting July 1st. So that's like high level timeline to get someone in place by July 1st. I'm going to ask if the other committee members have anything that they'd like to add about that first section, the timeline.
Margaret?
Well, I think after listening to Glenn and Liz that we perhaps need to move some of this up a little bit, particularly the advertising for the position. And even maybe our goal for hiring for a decision on a final candidate.
Jennifer?
Sorry, I'm thinking about, I think, I guess the idea of conducting a search and being completed before I know you're not saying before January, but that was that's what basically the timeline in here says. That feels like a lot to do in a short period of time, especially when, as I mentioned, I think we do want to sort of err on the side of lots of opportunity for public input. I feel like that element is going to be really important for us to have a successful search, for us to have a superintendent, for us to land on a superintendent who really wants to be here and someone who the community can support. I also want to say that this is a little awkward, but like we have some, we know we're going to have some amount of turnover on the regional school committee and Union 26 by starting January. And I'd like to see the final decision about who to hire to be made with the committee that's going to be working with that superintendent.
I think William was next, and then Tillman, and then Gabriella.
Is there any
When
way
did
that
you
we
say
can
that
have
the
MASC
final decision was
comments
wanted to be made?
on our agenda, our timeline here?
Yes.
I think it was March 1st.
Do you have any suggestions?
Do you have any?
Was what we came up with.
Or maybe we could have them come talk to our subcommittee, I don't know.
You know best what your community expects from you. We don't know that. So we can make that schedule work. We can make, a search consultant or a district can make that schedule work. You might want to consolidate it a little bit so it doesn't run so long, but I understand you may want to hear from a lot of people and that may take time. So I say you would have more flexibility in Western Massachusetts with the candidates who come to Western Massachusetts are more likely to be more patient than people in the East who may want to get this done quickly. So I would say to you, think about what you feel your community expects from you, and you can make it work.
Thank you. Sorry for bringing you up as well.
Tillman?
So I have one specific suggestion and a question. So what worries me a little bit about the timeline is that if we post on December 1st, and what we heard from MASC is that the idea is that you should leave the position open for 4 to 5 weeks so that applicants can write their material and submit it, that would be right at the end of the year holiday break. So if it was possible to post mid-November, then we could have the deadline just before the holiday break, which would be good because people could finish their work and then break, and we wouldn't have that delay. And my question is, why are there 2 rounds of interviews before bringing people? I mean, for the third interview then. So I'm not quite sure what the distinction between those 2 rounds are.
I can answer that. I was kind of modeling this on staff searches that I've been on at UMass, where there's a round of screening interviews, which is like a relatively short, possibly virtual interview, where you interview a relatively large pool. So like if we have, as I said, like 20 applicants, we might do a screening interview for 10 people. I don't know, maybe that's too much. And then from there, we narrow it down to a second round of people to have more in-depth conversations with. As I said, all of this is this is for the committees to decide. So there'd be 2 rounds. There's like an initial round, a second round, and then actually 3 rounds, I guess, and then finalists. It looks like
May
Liz.
I just add something quickly to
Would you?
that?
Yes,
Thank you.
please, just.
You would, if you're anticipating having a second round of screening in executive session, you'd need to talk to your attorney about that. I'm not certain that 2 rounds in executive session would be allowable. Did you mean the second round with the school committee?
No, the intention is for the search committee to do both rounds, do both rounds.
Just check with your legal counsel on that. I'm not sure that you can do a second round once you've selected semifinalists, so to speak. But maybe I'm just not clear on your intent.
So,
Mark Terry would advise you on that.
okay, thank you.
Can I put one comment now that I've gotten into? I think and there's an opportunity to consolidate the schedule a little bit by having a single round of interviews that bring enough information so that we can decide on finalists. And therefore we would be able to make an offer a little bit earlier and not run the risk that if a good candidate has multiple offers that they just take the other one.
Yep, Gabrielle?
One concern I had to do with
posting the job in December or December 1st, especially given the comment about, making sure that we have access to the full pool of interested candidates who might be out there. And one suggestion I could make toward that is that our community input is going to be particularly important for the search committee when it's developing questions for interviewing candidates and knowing what to look for based on the community input. But the community input might be less important or less effectual when it comes to developing the job description itself. There are many things in the job descriptions that are going to be fairly standard and that our committee that already exists can foresee wanting to have in that job description. I don't think that the job description itself is going to really filter a lot of candidates as to whether or not they are looking for a superintendency in Western Massachusetts. And so one possibility is that we could actually post the job even as those community input sessions are taking place.
Katie and William?
I just wanted to, again, take a look at where we are as a district, and I'm almost curious if our job description isn't maybe as easy to produce as we think it is, given where we are and the leadership structure right now, and knowing that, the way things have been, we have a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, whose job as assistant superintendent carries a lot of different elements. So thinking that through in terms of how do we bring in elements of particular job descriptions to make the superintendent's job description, if you will.
Thank you. William?
I was just saying, in our subcommittee, we talked about doing a job description prior to having a search committee. And something that I felt was important is that we needed transparency and really involve the community just for the healing process of what we've been through. And I feel like that would be a great time to listen to the community and give them power to have input on the job description. So I feel like that it might not be important always, but I feel like it's really important today because of where our community is, and we want to be able to listen.
Roger?
I agree with you to a point, but one of the things that I heard you two, and thank you, this is a great document. One of the things that I see is you talked about the specificity of this person, someone from the Midwest knows about bonds. We have all of these committees. And there's something to be said about thinking in terms of what is all of the factors that anybody in the community might bring up are all important, no doubt. But there are some things, it's sort of like how you gonna pay for your house. Those things are really important. And because if you don't have a house, you don't have school to have the house in. So what I'm saying is we have to be very careful that the community is important in terms of their questioning. But also there are those technical things that the community may not know about, may not understand, and I'm not too sure that all of those factors will. We have a tendency in Amherst, and I taught here for 38 years, so I know, it's about the results sometimes. And oftentimes people didn't look to see how we got there. And when I think about a superintendent, just offering an opinion, that's what I want. How do we get there? And I want that superintendent to be able to manifest, our greatest needs. I want that to be their greatest strength. Other things, wants to play shortstop, but he's too short, so he's going to play third base. But you get my drift, and I think that that's important as well. And I don't know, that's why I think your idea is good, that once that job description goes out and it's got that kind of information, and for the people, for the prospective superintendents, once that comes out, then you want to get people, as you said, who have that ability. And so that's why I think that you can put the job description out and then ask community questions, because they're gonna wanna know things that are far more personable, that are have to do with the things that well, who are without a superintendent now. So I agree.
Katie?
I have a question in terms of the role of the search committee, and in terms of, will they, for example, be included in the search or recruiting of the firm, or is that just on the small group of you? And likewise, is it the small group of you who are creating the questions for the focus groups and or the surveys that are disseminated, or again, is that the larger group?
Can I answer that?
Yep.
So our process, our proposed process is that the search subcommittee doesn't make any decisions. The large joint committees, the regional committee and the Union 26 make all the decisions. So that the joint committees would decide whether to hire a search firm and which search firm to hire, and would ultimately finalize the questions. So that's that. Like the search subcommittee is our job is, the way we see it, is our job is to do research and legwork and bring decisions to these two bodies. We didn't intend for the search committee to be involved in hiring a search firm, because you'll see later that we're proposing a large search committee, and we didn't intend for them to be involved in the hiring of a search firm.
Thank you. No, Anna, and then I'll say something.
I was just gonna say, maybe as sort of a compromise between having the search committee and the community have a lot of input in the job description. Maybe the search subcommittee can draft a job description that's pretty good, and then throw that out for comment with the community so that it's a little bit more structured, and we don't have to like put the job description together from scratch with the entire search committee, and that would just speed things up a little bit.
All right.
Go ahead, Arv.
So I didn't think that we were going to be trying to make any kind of decisions tonight in relationship to this. All right. So I'm assuming that these are all questions that are going to be taken by the subcommittee, and that there is not going to be any vote or consensus on anything. So I just want to make that clear, A, and B, that the process for doing this is a collaborative process between Union 26 and the region.
And Pelham.
Well, Union 26, and Union 26 is a superintendency union. So that particular Union 26 has to be prominent in the search, as well as Pelham, because Pelham is represented in Union 26. So and I'm only saying that to make sure that we stay within those lines, and also to ensure that and there's some clarification that is needed, but we have to have a decision at some point in terms of how we really want this subcommittee operating. We haven't really made a decision. We gave them a charge to start the process for forming a superintendent search committee. That was the charge, and so I just want to make sure that we're drawing inside the lines here, and that if we've charged this committee to come up with the search committee, that's what I expect, is that that committee is going to come up with a search committee. That search committee, then in terms of its charge, its duties and responsibilities, will come from this committee, i.e. this group. All right. Any decisions that particular search committee makes has to come back, obviously, to the school committee.
Well, they're not making any decisions.
No,
they're doing research and bringing the information back for everybody to make together.
All right, just make sure that we get, because I keep hearing two things here. There is a search subcommittee. That search subcommittee was charged by this committee with forming a superintendent search committee. All right?
No.
I don't think that's accurate.
Well, go back to the minutes.
I thought we were charged with, like, doing the legwork and suggesting a search committee, but that we were gonna bring it back to the full, both Union 26 committee and the
Regional.
RSC, and we would decide as a group. We weren't gonna make any decisions, we were just going to propose ideas.
Correct.
Wait a minute.
So I'll also say
Wait.
further down the line, they've created a lovely list of groups of people that think
Right.
need to be represented, that multiple people can be the same group.
I understand, but I just want us to go back to the minutes to make sure we're talking about the same thing, because I'm on a different page. I was thinking that the search committee, the subcommittee was going to form a search committee. That search committee, superintendent search committee, would get going and they would actually conduct the search. And what I'm hearing here is that the subcommittee is going to be doing legwork for the search committee. Is that correct?
So the
Doing legwork for us.
the region,
Yeah, I'm off.
Tillman?
My recollection is that we charge the SSS to propose a process on how they and the search committee would work together to find us a
We need to go back to the
proposed candidate for superintendent. And that, I agree with Irv, that all decisions about that would be made by the school committees. In that context, I had hoped that today we would make a decision to modify and approve that process that was proposed. There's a nice memo here that lays out some ideas. And now I'm hearing that we may not do that. I just want to point out that we will lose a lot of time if we keep going back and forth about feedback, and then the meeting, the SSS meeting again, and then us approving, and then they're creating the committee. So we should probably figure out how best we can structure our decision process so that we can get on the timeline that we're aiming for.
yes, I agree, thank you. Do you mind scrolling down? Do you mind if we jump to your list?
Sure.
Is that all right?
Sure.
So, I mean, you can take over, but you have a lovely list of all, groups of people that could, are going to want input on this. And I was listening to about what William and Roger said, and I think both ideas have a lot of merit. I think maybe the job description itself doesn't need to be created by this list of people. But I do think this list of people should help to create the list of questions and how we go through figuring out who will be the best candidate. So I do think we can move, I think we should move quickly about advertising and having the job description ready to go, and then work with this group of people, because we're not going to need those questions while people are applying, right? We need those when it comes to interviewing and having actual conversation. So, Katie?
No, I think I was curious about whether or not this group of people would be part of the questions for focus groups or for survey formation, so that they can bring their perspective to those question documents, whatnot.
And
Yep, Irv?
I'm sort of frustrated because I don't know what the decision-making process is going to be in relationship to A, the regional group, as we said right here, and B, Union 26, in terms of what we're discussing tonight. In other words, where are we going tonight? Are we going to make a decision in terms of how we're going to move forward? Or are we just discussing this particular document in terms of what Jennifer brought forward here? In other words, are we going to be making any decisions related to this particular document and the charge that the subcommittee was charged with? I want to make sure we go back to the minutes and read those minutes so that we can really understand what we really said we were going to, that group was going to do, that subcommittee was going to do. And that will be back in the minutes, and we can bring that forward at the next meeting. But we will review those minutes.
Sure. Jennifer?
My recollection lines up with what Tillman said, that the superintendent search subcommittee's charter was to lay out a high-level propose a high-level timeline and propose how the search committee and the search subcommittee would work together, and that all final decisions would be made by the regional school committee and Union 26 jointly. The search subcommittee would not make any decisions. We have a policy about subcommittees. The regional school committee has a policy about subcommittees, and the policy literally says the subcommittee is not empowered to make decisions that the full committee should make. So the search subcommittee is going to propose things for these two bodies to discuss. Irv, I hear what you're saying, that you are, I don't know, concerned about making decisions tonight or not. I would say the one decision I'm hoping this body can make tonight is to just empower the search subcommittee to go off and talk to recruiting firms. And we haven't talked about that portion of the memo yet. I don't know that that requires a vote. I'm not saying we should go hire one, but just like, could this body come to consensus that the search subcommittee can go and talk to search firms? So that's one consensus I'm hoping we can make. I don't think it requires a vote. And then I would like to get input from these two bodies on this list and the items in number 3.
Items. Gabriela?
No, go ahead.
I would hope that given the need to move at a reasonable but, efficient pace, that we could in fact make some decisions about this proposal. Particularly, I hope that we can come to some agreements on what things are going to be able to happen in the next 2 months, including perhaps which group is going to draft an initial job description for comment, and going ahead and finding that search firm. I think that it's useful. We're here and we've got a solid proposal in front of us. I would like us to make some decisions on as much of it as possible.
Sure. Tillman, did you have your hand up before? I don't want to put you on the spot. You're in the line where I can't see very well.
It's fine. Let's move on.
Okay, thank you. Did you have one more? You said you had another part you wanted to talk about.
Well,
part 3.
Yeah, part 3 and then part 2. We don't have to do them in order, but do you want to ask a question first? No. Okay, so, we'll skip to part 3. So, duties and composition of the search committee. So, okay, we want to, the SSS, search subcommittee, discuss the balance between having broad participation on the search committee so that membership is broad and represents many different identities and communities in our school community. I'm sorry. I'm talking about the first bullet point, which is also balancing having having the search committee have a significant task in front of them, but also not burdening the search committee with too much work and responsibility. So if we want membership on the search committee to be accessible, by which I mean something that someone is able to do if they also have a family and a job and other responsibilities, we want to make sure the search committee is empowered and has a significant job and responsibility, but not make it too onerous to be a member. And I actually, at our search subcommittee meeting, we had one member of the public who attended, because obviously it's a public meeting, and I got an email from that person afterwards, and she basically said she might be interested in being on the search committee, but she would be interested in being part of the group that goes through resumes and makes decisions on candidates. But that's about all she can. That's all she can commit, the time that she can commit to, because it's a lot to ask people. It's a lot to ask the search committee to attend and oversee community sessions and to draft a job description. So we're trying to balance having the search committee be very involved, but also not making membership too onerous. So that's one thing first. So I guess in my second bullet point, I say the search committee's role would be to give input on the job description, not to draft it, to review all applications. So by which I mean, my feeling is that the search committee should review all applications. All applications to the position would be reviewed by the search committee. And if that's a lot of applications, that's a really good problem that we would have. You know, if the search committee is asked to go through many applications, that would be a great problem. And then determine candidates. And I have here for first and second round interviews and recommend finalists, but we can obviously, none of this is written in stone, as I said. We can all discuss how many rounds of interviews we want to have. And then, let's see. Our recommendation is to charter the search committee prior to developing the superintendent job description. And so the subcommittee had discussions about the two paths of chartering a search committee and writing a job description, whether those could happen at the same time. Some of us felt like the search committee should be chartered first so that they could have input on the job description, and it sounds like maybe this body is saying we should consolidate and maybe try to do both those things at once, and that's definitely something that we can discuss. But ultimately, the job description would be finalized and approved by the Regional School Committee in Union 26. So now if you could, I don't know, is it Doug? If you could scroll down to the next page. We're recommending a search committee of 15 to 20 members, and we acknowledge that that's large. But as I said, I want to err on the side of being more inclusive. And here's the categories that we came up with. And I think there are 23 categories, maybe 25 categories, but obviously people are intersectional and people are complex, and there's going to be people who will fill more than one of these categories. But these are the categories that we came up with. So I'm just going to go through them so that we can all hear them. So regional staff, so middle school or high school staff, Amherst elementary staff, Pelham elementary staff, building principal, administrator, direct report of the superintendent, an educator, a special ed educator, non-educator staff, APEA member, APAA member, AFSCME member, UFCW member. If I'm missing one of our unions, I hope someone will let me know, or we can always add it. I want to have representation from each of our employee unions. A regional parent, or a middle school or high school parent or guardian, Amherst elementary parent or guardian, Pelham elementary parent or guardian, a CPAC, which is Special Education Parent Advisory Council, parent or guardian, a high school student would be great. And then someone who identifies as LGBTQIA+, identify as BIPOC, identify as a person with a disability, identify from being part of some other historically marginalized identity, speaker of language other than English, municipal government representative, and a community member maybe who is a parent of a graduate or doesn't fill any of these other roles, but you know, our community members are very involved. So I'd love to get input on this list. If there's someone missing, or there's a category missing from the list, I'd love to hear that as well.
Gabriella?
I think you've got a lot of good categories here. One question I had is, on some of these, how would you find out? Because some of this is very personal information, and for example, you know, the recent Supreme Court decisions about recruitment in higher education, right? Being able to use various forms of identity for admission. And one of the solutions to that has been that institutions are including in the personal essays a question something like, how would your identity or background enhance the goals of this hiring committee, or insert, you know, role here. So one of it is a question, how would you find out this information, and the other is a suggestion of ways that we might have people discuss the way that they would bring their identity and various, you know, sets of skills and viewpoints to the committee.
Can I answer that? So the subcommittee didn't discuss that part, but I thought later that one way to go about doing this is to have an online form that describes the search committee and then has checkboxes. Literally, do you identify as one of these? And we would just ask people to self-disclose, not self-disclose anything confidential, but like, do you identify as LGBTQIA+? Check. Do you identify as a person with a disability? Check. Like, I'd not ask them to prove it, or not ask them anything beyond that, but just ask people to, you know, honor system, ask people to self-disclose which of these categories they fall into. And as I said, people are going to fall into more than one. There's going to be elementary parents and middle school parents. There's going to be, educators who are also BIPOC. So we want to make sure that all of these boxes are checked by someone on the committee, but it can be, one person can check more than one box. So, I think that's how I see figuring out who fills each of these categories. I don't know that, and then we also talked a little bit about how would we decide if we have lots of people interested, how would we then choose the 15 to 20 people to be on the committee? We didn't quite get that far. I think we thought if 30 people want to join, again, that would be a really good problem to have, and we'd have to talk about how to narrow it down.
Go ahead, just to follow up on that, if you go the checkbox route, I think we should put in place some safeguards with respect to confidentiality of the information, because they may be willing to disclose some of these things for the purpose of selection onto the committee, but then they don't necessarily want that being
Absolutely.
public or
Yes.
broadcast to even to other members on the committee, perhaps.
That's a great point. Thank you.
All right. Tillman?
I just want to say I very much like the suggestion for the process on how to fill these categories. We may even consider just doing a lottery to fill the seats, which would remove a lot of complexities of having to think about a process of how to decide or then justifying why it was decided. So basically, pick people out of a hat until all boxes are checked. That could be a solution, right? So in light of what Irv said earlier in terms of making a decision, I would like to suggest that the committees here, if they feel so, endorse this general process. I didn't say approve because I'm not sure it's the right word, but endorse that process and request that the subcommittee present at the next meeting 4 things. One would be a revised timeline that aligns with the discussion that we had earlier. And I should say, sorry, my proposal is for the most aggressive schedule, so we can slow it down, but I'm just hopefully. Have a draft job description. And I just looked at one from Veston, which is posted on the MASC website, and basically everything they say could apply to us. I mean, it doesn't seem particularly earth-shatteringly different, so I hope that would be possible. That they propose a specific search firm, which implies that we have allowed them to go off and talk to search firms, and propose a slate of candidates for the search committee, either following the process or, if we're not quite there, present that final process of how that committee would be selected. And I think we meet again in 2 weeks. So that would, I think, move us along considerably.
So can I just make sure I got all of there?
Yes.
So to revise the timeline that is in line with the MASC one?
In line with our conversation, right? MSC,
Oh, okay.
MSC presented a very aggressive
Yep.
one. I think we had some discussion about what's feasible because of our desire to have community input. We're not going to be that aggressive, but just
Yep. And then a draft job description, a proposal for a specific search firm,
yes.
and propose the candidates for the search committee, and if not, the actual humans on the committee, how those humans are going to be chosen.
Right. And maybe we can discuss here, if we're satisfied with this and the process that Jennifer described, obviously they would need to go out and actually start that process in order to get actual.
Yep. Margaret?
I would strongly prefer that item number 4 be to propose the process, and not, because I don't think in 2 weeks we can do what's required, but we could propose the process for how it would be done. And if the committee approved it, it could begin after the next meeting.
Anna?
I mean, if we're gonna get this going in the time frame that we're talking about, we kind of have to. And so we're gonna have to put out a notice asking for people to, send a statement of why they want to be on the search committee, and start reviewing those lists like now. So I think that it's, you know, it's a lot of work and it's something that's gonna be really hard to accomplish, but if we don't try, we're gonna be really behind schedule.
Okay.
So, I think we need more than a process, but in 2 weeks. Maybe, I don't know if we can actually have the thing, but more than a process.
So does that imply that the subcommittee is going to start reaching out, create a form, create the things without coming back to the full committee to get their approval? I mean, it sounds to me like you're asking the subcommittee to make the decisions that we've said we're not gonna make.
Tillman?
May I clarify? So, I don't think that they would make a decision without clarifying. What they could do, for example, would be to post a form and say, anybody who's interested in the search, please, you know, identify yourself plus, you know, the categories that you match. They can then collect that information. They could select a list of names from that by whatever process they choose and present that list to us. If we then say we don't feel that we have a suitable representative for a particular category, we could ask for modifications. But at some point, they need to go and find specific names, and then we get to approve them.
Irv?
Yeah, I think, you know, everything everyone is saying is appropriate, except that the agenda item, the agenda that we had on here did not include a discussion, vote, recommendation, etc. So coming to this meeting, and I looked at what was being presented, I did not think that I was going to be then having to make a decision as to whether this was going to go forward or not go forward. So, and so I feel somewhat not prepared. And also, if we were going to do that on the agenda, the agenda item would, as specifically said, discussion and vote, which it didn't. All right. So, having said that, in all practicality, that what we do need to do after listening to all of this is we do need to move expeditiously with what we have before us in relationship to Jennifer's recommendations and the subcommittee's recommendations in terms of moving forward. So in terms of that, can we boil it down to a recommendation from this committee, i.e. a vote for this committee, so that so that the subcommittee can get moving with its charge and work? But we haven't approved anything yet.
No.
Gabriella?
My understanding of the suggestion made by Tillman is that it's along those lines, that we're making suggestions for how the subcommittee can move forward by giving them 4 specific items to work on next. Is that, I'm putting this out there for clarification. That's what I
Yeah, that's what he was saying, but if we are going to do that, then the committee has to vote on that in one way or another, to say, yes, this is what we want that subcommittee to do. And I haven't, that has not been put forward in terms of a motion, so that we can say, yes, that's what we want to do, and we record ourselves as saying, yes, that's what we want to do. That has not been put forward as a motion. Tillman.
Yes, Irv makes an excellent point that it doesn't say that on the agenda, and I want to respect that we should follow accurate process. So one way to address this is that we're providing feedback, this is part of the discussion, which is on the agenda, and basically we're asking for a revision of this document because there are some things that are going to be different, like the timeline. So maybe what we could do at the next meeting is that the first agenda item is that we approve the process of the revised document that the subcommittee will present then, so that we formally approve the process. Assuming that that process gets approved, the subcommittee can then immediately make specific recommendations, such as which search firm to use and the process by which we select people, or potentially even the people that are on the search committee, so that we would follow that originally laid out process in sequence.
Yeah.
Katie?
I'm getting a little bit lost, but in terms of the document you've presented, thank you to the SSS for putting this together. It's a great starting point. I'd almost recommend that we can make some sort of, I don't think it has to be a motion, but like go forth and start the recruitment for the larger community members. In terms of if we are going to revise that timeline, I just want to point to the fact that the heavy lift is really in these first few months in terms of developing the job description, getting everyone kind of on the same page in terms of what we find from focus groups, surveys, whatnot, gathering that information to then develop a job description. I think putting the job description out there first kind of puts the cart before the horse, because the goal is to gather community input to then develop that job description, if I'm not mistaken. And then come time when it's throughout this, once the job description's out, there will be time to develop the interview questions to prepare for that second part of the search. And I also want to make mention that being in the academic field, that break in December is gold, right? And I would foresee that potential applicants are going to use, not that there's time off when you're a superintendent, but that slower paced time. So I think even backing up like a due date to around, the first of the year or whatnot is probably acceptable.
Irv?
Yeah, let's try to figure out a way that we can move forward now and have it official that we are agreeing to move forward. But we're going to have to agree to move forward on something, and Tillman put forward something. And that can be boiled down to a motion that we can then vote on.
Jennifer?
So, my understanding is that, yes, we should have potential votes on the agenda so that the public knows we might vote on something and they can come and participate and watch and give public comment. That being said, I don't think it's a requirement that a vote can only take place if it's been on the agenda, because anyone can make a motion at any time and then we can, but that being said, I think in the service of transparency, it's a good idea to post votes if we know they're gonna happen. That being said, like, there are specific things that school committees have to vote on, like budgets and superintendents and things like that. And then in spending and that stuff. And I feel like this stuff, I think it's less important that we have an official motion and vote, and more important that we have consensus, that no one strongly objects to the next steps, and that we discuss it, everyone has a chance to say their thing, to give their input, and then we sort of come to a group consensus, which is different from having to vote. So all that being said, I kind of like Tillman's 4 suggestions, but let's see. We haven't talked about hiring a search firm, but it sounds like maybe people are okay. Well, we should talk about that because that's number 2 on the memo. That's going to take time for this subcommittee to identify search firms and then talk to them. I think I'm just going to say I don't think the search committee is going to have, the subcommittee is going to have time to post an online form and collect responses, then come up with names. I think that's asking too much of us in the time. One of the things I say is that the subcommittee plans to meet the Wednesday before every regional school committee and Union 26 meeting, and our next meeting is in 2 weeks. Our next meeting of these bodies is in 2 weeks, so the search subcommittee's next meeting is going to be the Wednesday before that. But we are going to do work in between. Anyway, I think that's too much work for the search subcommittee. That being said, I think the subcommittee could develop a proposal for what the form would look like. Anna mentioned a letter of interest, and I don't even necessarily know that we need people to write, like, what, I don't know, do we need people to write why they want to serve? And if we did, what would we even do with that? Or do we just collect people who are interested in and which buckets they fall into? That's something that the subcommittee can discuss. So I think proposing, to Tillman's number 4, proposing a process for the search committee, moving backwards. Possibly discussing the search firms we've talked to. I don't know that, like, picking one, possibly we would pick one, but discussing the search firms we've talked to. jumping to number 1, revising the timeline with input from this discussion is fine. And then about the job description, so we talked a lot about the job description and getting community input, and like the way I'm looking at it, like some high percentage, like 75% of a superintendent's job is like mass general law. It's like, these are the things that a superintendent has to do. And that's probably like a template that we can get from somewhere. It's that extra 25% that I want to get community input on. Like even Glenn even said, sometimes the school committee needs a superintendent who's going to build buildings, which we are going to have. Sometimes they want them to deal with budgets, which we are going to have too. Sometimes they want them to be community builders. So it's like that extra 25% on top of their, lawful duties that we're going to want to get input on. So we could bring that 75% job description to the committees, and then maybe some ideas for the extra 25%. I'm using those percentages roughly for the school committees to react to at the next meeting. So I don't know that it needs a vote, but we should discuss that, and like if anyone objects or has strong objections or opinions, we can talk about those.
Irv?
Jennifer, I really admire your optimism, but what I have a problem with is when you say come to consensus. How do we determine if we have a consensus? By all of us raising our hand? If we are raising our hand, what is the difference between that and a vote? All right, so here's what I'm saying. If we are going to have a formal format and we are going to have an agreement that the school committee has said that they are going to go along with, that we all agree we're going to do, then I want us to be on record that we have agreed to do this, and each one of us has gone on record as agreeing to do that. That is why the votes are recorded, because it makes sure that people cannot say later on, well, I didn't agree to that. And this is a public meeting. We are a public body. We are responsible for decisions that we make. Decisions are not made by just all of us raising our hands. It's made by a formal process that has been laid out for us to follow. And all I'm saying and wanting to do is to come to a vote on what we want to do. Otherwise, if we don't do that, I see this discussion going on forever tonight. When does it end?
Anna, and then
Can I make a motion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Please.
I would like to move that the search subcommittee comes back next meeting with a revised timeline, with a draft job description that includes sort of the lawful basics and suggestions for other components, and a list of potential search firms with a possible recommendation for one in particular, and a form for collecting interested candidates for the search committee.
Second.
Whoa, hold on. All right.
I didn't realize you could type that fast, by the way.
With Katie, were you the second? No, Gabriella. Okay, sorry. All right. Can I just read it back to you? Okay. So a motion that the SSS comes back to the next meeting with a revised timeline, a draft job description, which includes the lawful components and suggestions for, you didn't say bonus items. What were the?
Additional components, yeah.
Thank you. And
a list of possible search firms, a list of search firms and a possible recommendation.
and a form for the community members?
To solicit interest. The search committee.
Okay. the SSS comes back at the next meeting with a revised timeline, a draft job description, including the lawful components and suggestions for additional components, and a list of search firm and a possible recommendation, and a form to solicit interest from community members to be on the search committee.
Oh,
Anna, and then Tillman. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Katie.
If I can just also ask, and it doesn't have to be included perhaps in that motion, but also just to facilitate this process, because it seems to be a new one for us, to have the objective of what the SSS is trying to achieve amongst this group for that meeting. So for example, we are looking to, I'm assuming, approve the new timeline, etc. But also if there's things for the future beyond that list of 4 items to also be thinking that through. It seems to me that we had a lot of conversation about what this process is looking like. So just to clarify, to go in with, hey, out of this meeting together, we would like X, Y, and Z accomplished. And to clarify that ahead of time.
Tillman?
So in that spirit, I would like to make a friendly amendment so that we expand the motion to endorse the general process in the memo that was provided by the SSS and ask for the following additions and changes by the next meeting. So the point is that we endorse the process in the memo, because that way we have then endorsed the process, which to our recollection was the requirement that we need to approve from the motion last time.
Is a second required for the?
Yes.
Second.
That was friendly.
It's a friendly amendment.
Alright,
Yeah.
so
I accept.
excellent. So the motion now reads to endorse the original process as presented in the memo, and the SSS comes back the next meeting with a revised timeline, a draft job description including lawful components and suggestions for additional components, and a list of search firms and possible recommendations, and form to solicit interest from the community members on the search committee.
Just to make sure, technically what will happen is that is coming back to a joint meeting of the region and Union 26.
Yep.
Yes.
This is a region motion.
I know it's a region motion, but I just want to make sure that when we have the meeting, not in terms of this particular motion, but the meeting, yes, this motion has to be passed by Union 26 and the region.
All right, so, we're in person, so do we just raise our hand? All in favor? At the region? Excellent, thank you. All opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent, thank you.
All in terms of the motion that was put on the floor, and including the amendment, Union 26, how many, in terms of the motion, in terms of the vote, I'd like to have a vote, a show of hands is how many are in favor of the motion. This is Union 26.
Do we need a second on the motion?
The second should be taken.
Well,
The motion, look, I'll tell you what, let's go back. We can read the motion again. I was hoping that we could get away with not doing it.
Just say so moved.
We can say,
I move that the Union 26 School Committee approve the same motion that the Regional School Committee approved.
that's
Yeah.
even better, all right. All right, all those in favor? Any opposed? None, it's unanimous.
excellent. Okay, I think we are on to our next, which is Margaret.
I move that the Pelham School Committee adjourn.
I will second it.
All those in favor?
Nice sitting with you.
Yeah, it's nice to sit next to you.
I move that the Amherst School Committee adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous.
Okay.
What about Union 26?
And Union 26,
Who seconded?
that was,
Katie seconded the Amherst motion. And I'll second Irv's Union 26 motion.
all right, all those in favor of Union 26? It's unanimous. No one outside of this would know what the hell was going on. I mean, literally because of all, it's really complex in terms of who,
Can I
Union
make
26.
Sarah Beth, can I make a point of order?
I'm the only one leaving.
I realize that the four school committees were called to order tonight. The Amherst School Committee, the Pelham School Committee, the Regional School Committee, and Union 26. But, and I'm sure there are reasons for that, but, and I mean, right now, there's like 100% overlap between Amherst School Committee, Pelham School Committee. There's 100% overlap. But anyway, I think that it's not necessary and possibly not even appropriate for the Amherst School Committee and the Pelham School Committee to be called to discuss superintendent stuff, because the Amherst School Committee and the Pelham School Committee are jointly represented by Union 26. So it's confusing to us and to the public, and even the MASC folks were confused about what school committees are actually involved. It's just just the region and Union 26 are involved in superintendent things, and all districts that the superintendent oversees are represented by the Regional School Committee and Union 26. So I just would suggest in the future that just those.
Yeah, we would only need to call to order Union 26 in the region, not Amherst.
And yet we did tonight.
No, so the reason we did that is so all people for all of them, it was before all the overlap was happening, right? So all of them could be part of the presentation for the MASC to see what was happening.
Okay.
That's why.
Thank you.
Margaret?
So I'm going to recommend, move that we take a 5-minute recess before I come back and continue the rest of the regional meeting. So we'll come back at 8:20.
If anyone wants, there's cake on the back table.
Wow.
But I think we have to take it outside.
support you need.
Great.
I don't want that, I don't want you to get overwhelmed and shit starts hitting you. You know, and also, the school committee can absorb all of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You don't have to absorb.
Yeah, no, I think there'll be plenty of opportunities for everybody to to take that on. Yeah. Took me a minute. I got it up there.
So Anna, it's Anna. It's snowing outside, Anna. Yes.
Yeah, that's all right. You have room?
Yes, she is. She did. It was freezing out there last time.
It was warm too. I wanted to wear shorts, but I didn't know if I could, so. Maybe next time I'll wear shorts.
All right.
Who's this? Who just said that? Glenn Kuchar.
All right, so our first matter, now we're back in session. So our first matter of regional business is public comment. I am going to, we do have a recorded one.
Hi, this is Renata Shepard from Justice Drive in Amherst. It's a public comment for the school committee. My youngest child, a boy, is now in 5th grade, and I am looking at middle school sports options, and I'm disappointed to see girls soccer offered in 7th grade, but not boys. I also noticed the absence of indoor track and field in the winter for both boys and girls. I'm reaching out early, hoping to have results before the next 2 years. Those sports have helped tremendously my 3 older children, now adult graduates, who still continue being athletes and benefiting from sports' mental and physical health. Sports, especially the ones students favor, help them stay focused, active, and busy in a positive way. Amherst rec sports do not compare to middle and high school level of training. Is it possible to make boys soccer and indoor track happen for 7th and 8th graders? What steps should I take to request that? Who can help? How can we make sure that this can happen without affecting other sports? I'm sure that if it is offered, there will be people interested. And if there's no waiver, because there's a lot of kids in high school, I'm sure there will be people interested in middle school. Please let me know if that's a possibility or how we can get that ball rolling. Thank you so much. Bye.
Were there any members of the public that would like to come and make public comment?
Hello, my name is Laura Jane Hunter. I am a parent of an 8th grader and a 9th grader, and lived in Amherst for a long time now, feels like. I had a couple of things I wanted to address. I wanted to talk about the superintendent search a little bit, and I also wanted to talk about the Title IX report a little bit. My recommendations for the superintendent search, one is to slow down. I know that there is an urge to get this done and to finish, to get it going, get it started, get it done. And I think that that is a mistake that Amherst has made repeatedly over the years. I think that We see that from the hiring issues we've had across the district in the administration, particularly in the middle school, but not just there. So I would really encourage you to take it in a thoughtful way that doesn't emphasize speed. The other thing is about having students on the search committee. I have worked in institutions that have put students on search committees, sometimes mostly college students, but other students too. And I would encourage you not to put one, but to put two on the search committee. I think there's a lot of good reasons for doing that. One of which is that students are actually busier than adults are in the evenings. They have sports commitments, they have theater commitments, they have government commitments, whatever the commitments are, and that sometimes one of them might not be available, but at least you would still have representation from a student, right? So that's one piece. And also having each other to support each other in a room full of grown-ups who are making a big decision is helpful, I think. I do think high school students, probably. Having a middle school student myself, I'm not sure I would encourage you to put a middle school student on. No offense. To my child, who's not listening. So that's really what I want to say. I think that the way that you decide who's on that search committee is really, really important. I have witnessed multiple times a search that is said to be like random or unbiased that actually isn't. It's handpicked and cherry-picked. I think that's something we should be very cautious of doing, given our history in this town, and that an open and public process for even how you're making the decision of who's on it. I'm not advocating for anything specific, except I did hear, was it Glenn, say something about a police chief being on the committee. I would say do not do that. That is not appropriate in this situation. So that's what I wanted to say about the search. So I do want to read a paragraph from an open letter to Dr. Slaughter that was published in the Indy I think it was like a week or two ago. This was written by the LGBT caucus, the Black caucus, and the Latinx caucus, I think is the name. Is that my time? Can I read it really fast?
Super, super fast.
Really fast. I'll do this. You stated that legal counsel has advised you to keep the results of the report from the public, as the Title IX report, making them available only to people who have historically been in Mike Morris's administration and inner circle. This crisis calls for new eyes and leadership we can trust. It is crucial for the safety of the students and the trust of the community that the people receiving the results are not people who might be implicated or people who have demonstrated a long history of protecting themselves and other administrators at the expense of children. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Allie Wick-Slim. Before I start with my comments, I just want to put out a plea to consider putting public comment at the beginning of meetings. This was supposed to be at 7:15. I know there are a lot of people who want to be at these meetings and have things to say who just can't leave their kids home alone for this long. So please consider that as an access issue. I also just want to say a couple of things about representation and transparency. I want to welcome the new members who are here and who were appointed, and I'm happy you're all here. At the same time, I just want to name that, and this is not personal at all because I think all three of you are going to do a great job, but there were two potential people who were willing to come and do this work who were representatives of the LGBTQIA community. And the people who voted failed to put either of them in this position. Jen Shaw, I want to thank you for supporting both of those candidates because this is a crucial, crucial time for representation from the LGBTQIA community. When it came to the rest of the council voters, and frankly to you, Irv, it was disappointing that neither of the two people who disclosed themselves as queer identified were brought onto this committee at this time. When we've been talking about representation pretty much every time we've met, it was noted by the queer community. We're concerned. We need our representatives here. We need people who understand the emergency. I also want to mention that we've been watching closely at this proposal for the parent-guardian advisory group being put out by the schools, and we're asking that in addition to this, that the regional school committee commit to making the school equity task force functional again, and that we believe that that model would provide much greater transparency and accountability than the advisory group alone. We'd like the school equity task force, it has been a powerful subcommittee in the past, and as a subcommittee, it has sort of the checks and balances of school committee involvement. And we would ask that that committee would have LGBTQIA representation on it, and that whatever parent advisory group is formed in the schools would report directly to the school equity task force, so that there would be another way for the community to kind of keep an eye on that work. Finally, I just want to talk about transparency, and I have two things to say. One is about the Title IX investigation. Laura mentioned something that was an open letter to Superintendent Slaughter, and I would like to reference that. It's in the Indy at this point. Anybody can read it. It calls for transparency and redacting whatever is absolutely necessary, but getting that information to you, the Regional School Committee, and also to the public. For so many obvious reasons. There were also 3 of us on WHMP Talk the Talk this morning calling for transparency around that. We recognize, can I just finish my sentence? We recognize that, you know, council has advised something. We also recognize that council's job is to protect the district from liability, and the superintendent's job goes deeper than that and answers to the people as well. And finally, if you really want to build trust through transparency, the September 27th press release that went out about Cory checks not being done for 20 months on staff members should have gone out to the parents of the district. Parents who had kids in the schools during that time deserve to know and have that information and have people they can go to with concerns about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to make public comment?
I'll talk fast. Yeah, I just wanted to, talk about the process for the superintendent. I think collaboration is important. I think the union would be very helpful. They could probably poll the staff to see what they're looking for in the superintendent. I would also recommend that in the BIPOC that, it's separated. Blacks have a different experience working in the district. So we really decided that we're going to be separate. We're not BIPOC, we're black, because we have different experiences. And I just really want to remind people that, this whole licensure and Cory isn't new. When Kathy Mazur, and it was under that heading, that when Doreen came in, that the administrators didn't have any licenses. And I can tell you that working in the athletic department, I had a black coach resign because for the 8 years, he didn't have a fingerprint. And I told him under my watch, as a black woman and the athletic director as a black woman, we're not gonna do that because we're gonna be held to a higher standard because of her skin color. And I see a rush to do this search, and that's part of the systemic culture, right? I'm not really a fan of this MASC. When Mike Morris became the superintendent, Kathy Mazur conducted a search, and the firm that they used failed the search because they eliminated all the people that had a prior arrest record. And it's like, different players, the game has changed, but the players have remained the same. And we're just really call upon you guys for transparency. We need some fresh blood. I wish we had Mike Morris made some promotions before he left. And that is deeply problematic. And those promotions should be rescinded. Do you know what I'm saying? Because there's no need for that. There's extra bodies. The school, I got a copy of a public request. It shows that the administrator's salaries is 15% of the budget, over $5 million. And yet still, paras in the library are being eliminated. We asked for $70,000 for paraprofessionals so they have a living wage, and that was denied. But then they find money to give one person $30,000 increase. So this district is deeply problematic, and it have the same players, or it have different players coming in, and it's just really, it's kind of frustrating. It really is. It's just very sad, and this, we cannot rush it. I understand, But that's part of the systemic racism, and this MASC mentioning the police, be it, no, that's not gonna happen. No. District it's in a hot mess, I can tell you that. We need fresh people.
Thank you, Ms. Georgia. Was there anyone else that wanted to make public comment? All right.
I do, actually.
Dr. Slaughter.
So I'll offer a public comment because we didn't officially put a superintendent update. But the one thing I did want to mention, and take a moment is I learned today that Barry Brooks Sr. passed away. I don't know if you guys knew Mr. Brooks, longtime educator in the district. His wife was as well, the lovely Judy Brooks. Really stalwart community members in general, but particularly for our school district. And so, you don't have to look very far for someone to have a story, a positive one, about Mr. Brooks. And so I'd like to take a moment just to remember him, and if you want to offer some comment too. I mean,
Barry was a really incredible member of this community. He also was one of the founders of the ABC program here in Amherst. He was someone, even after he retired, he came back to work with the schools, especially at the high school. So in terms of this, of Barry's passing, it's a loss for this community.
absolutely. So if we could just take a moment to remember Mr. Brooks. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you for sharing that. All right. So, back to you, Doug. An update on the interim finance director?
Yeah, so I've been, working through a few things and trying to keep up with the office, the business office, as well as some of the, superintendent roles. We have a number of experienced staff in the business office. We also have some new staff in the business office, and so, there's some great people to rely on, especially sort of just organizationally below me that are going to take on a fair number of tasks. But Ms. Mazur, who was here earlier, helped craft this draft. It's still a work in progress, but this outlines some of the asks that we will have of an interim person to come in and provide some relief to the department and carry some of the workload. From a process standpoint, one of the things that school committees do, they have really kind of four tasks. They do budget, they hire a superintendent, as you talked about earlier. They set policy. And the fourth thing they do is approve the special education director and the finance director for your community. So if we're bringing somebody in, then I'd come to you with a recommendation for who that person is. It's likely to be somebody that might be retired and looking to do a little bit of work. We anticipate it's an augmentative type role, but there are some things that require sort of official signature from the finance director. So this person would have that authority and would be mostly working in the office, but potentially could work remote a little bit. I think the key pieces are in the description above that just sort of explains the district, the fact that it's really 3 districts that you're looking at, and the size of the budget, the size of the district. The particular task, we'll refine those over the next couple of days, but try to get this out for review and solicit some folks that might be interested fairly soon, partly just because there's stuff that's got to get done and there's only so many hours in the day. So, if we can get somebody in to help out, that would be great. So I just wanted to, it's an ask to kind of give an update. I'm happy to answer any questions people have about the kinds of things we're looking at. As I said earlier, when you guys appointed me as interim superintendent, there's going to be a pretty heavy hand by me in the budget process, partly because I'm uptight that way, and and partly because I think it's going to be necessary, and the nuance of our budgets, plural, will require that sort of oversight and guidance, and of course there's staff in the department, in the business office now, who can provide a lot of that insight to those things. But our existing staff will work and in tandem with whoever we might find to help us out and kind of help support the departments move ahead. But I'm happy to answer any questions people have about where we are in the process and what our next steps are.
Tillman?
I noticed that there's no qualifications noted in the description, which is fine, right? You can hire anyone, but I'm just surprised.
Well, we technically, thank you for noticing that. Technically there is a license, and they would need to hold that or have some form of that license. A retiree might have let theirs lapse, so it might be a circumstance where they might need to seek and there's still, by virtue of COVID, the ability to get an emergency license. There's a person in my office that has an emergency license, but so we could also lean on that. But we would probably find somebody that either holds a license or could regain the license. So we're looking most likely at like I said, a retiree to help support us in that way, so they could be licensed.
Jennifer?
I have two questions. One was the exact same as Tillman's, which is a qualification. So license is important, but I was thinking more like X number of years experience working with a regional school district, or X number of years of experience working with multiple budgets at once. Because I know, Doug, you have talked about, you guys have 3 budgets that you deal with. So that's what I was thinking when it comes to qualifications, is experience doing XYZ thing.
Yeah, we could put some things in regarding that. Finding somebody that's worked with multiple budgets is pretty rare. So I've gone to the Mass Association of School Business Officials meetings. I think I've found one other person that has something similar to this. There are a couple out there. Hampshire Regional's kind of close, but not quite the same. There's a district, and now I'm drawing a blank on it, near Sturbridge, but it's not Sturbridge. So there's, so that's just active people who have that. So then you have to find a retiree from one of those few districts that sort of fit in, sets of districts. So it's probably going to be a question of, probably understanding a regional budget is probably more important. A municipal budget is much more straightforward. I mean, not to simplify it, but it's a little less, there are fewer sort of nuances to the process that they would need to learn in that regard. So probably looking for somebody with some regional experience is probably best.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about multiple budgets, but at the very least, there's lots of regional school districts in the state, so having someone with that experience. And my only other comment is the last sentence of the first paragraph says occasional attendance at school committee meetings, and I feel like, Doug, when you were finance director, you attended a lot more than occasional. So I don't know if are we underselling that, or do we need to?
Well, I think
really want this person to attend.
So the thing is that the advantage of having me in this role is that there are times when I could so like the quarterly reports, which we'll do probably at the next meeting. I can give that report, and it doesn't require necessarily have someone come in for that kind of thing. It is, to be perfectly honest, there's going to be a lot of meetings that will require the person to be here. There may be several that have to do with superintendent search that they don't have to be here for. So I think that may have been, aspirational in some respects. But, point well taken, we can make that clear. And certainly if we were talking with anybody, they're going to ask that question, because if they have to travel any distance to come here, school committee meetings that run, into the later hours of the evening are going to be tougher if someone's got an hour and a half to drive back to their home. So that'll be a fairly considerable piece of the conversation when talking with anybody that might be interested.
And Doug, this is obviously something that we're going to be leaning on you for, in terms of making a decision as to who this person is. Because when you look at the primary responsibilities of interim director, finance director, those are pretty specific things. I also noticed that, and you alluded to it, that the heavy lifting around the budget process that you're going to be really involved with. And obviously that's comforting, because it's a heavy lift, I know it's a heavy lift, and whoever else has been involved with it's a heavy lift. So, so the question that I have is, the kind of things that I see here are pretty pro forma kind of things that a person who already has that experience would know how to do. OPEB is one of them, excess and deficiency, fee structures, who knows, the audit review, those things are, if these, what I'm seeing is these things are gonna be taken off of your plate, which allows you to do more of what, of interim superintendent that we expect. Is that correct?
That's the goal, exactly. And there will be aspects of even some of these where existing staff will carry some of that burden as well. So, yes, I'm looking to sort of, for lack of a term, sort of shed these a little bit to free up time to spend on the superintendency work. And so, we want to make sure that the details of the business office, continue to get taken care of, both with an internal, staff as well as anybody we might be able to bring in.
One more question. We talking part-time, are we talking, when we say part-time, is that like half-time?
Probably about that is what I would guess. I mean, it'll somewhat depend upon the particular retiree. Well, I should say retiree, it could be not a retiree at all, but if it is a retire, there are limitations on number of hours they can work and the amount of money they can make, and so that will probably guide a little bit of it. And some of it will also be about, as we sort of, get a little more specific with tasks and responsibilities, that'll be part of that as well. If somebody says, I can do 5 hours a week, that's probably not gonna be enough to really provide the help we need. But if they say, I can do 15, 20, 25, then that's sort of the kind of neighborhood we're gonna look for. And then, we're gonna leverage their experience and, the pace at which they work and have to climb the learning curve to learn our stuff as part of that understanding of what they can do and what they can do in the time they have available to us, and does that meet our needs as a district?
And the last thing is, we would expect that you would come back to us with the salary requirement and what that would mean in terms of budget impact for this particular fiscal year.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that'll be part of the conversation. I mean, we'll have to be a little conscientious of it, but at the same time forthright about, what we expect it to cost us.
Right.
I mean, we don't want to negotiate in public, but in that regard.
Right.
But if we don't have a deal signed or that sort of thing, but at the same time, the budget impact for certain is a legitimate piece we have to address.
Yeah, and that's, we need to know that up front.
Right.
Going in.
Right.
All right.
Absolutely.
Katie?
I'm curious about the time frame for posting this and then opening it, closing the search. And also if we can add a DEI statement, or you keep referring to a retiree, so I'm wondering too if there's someone in mind that you are thinking of, or the search may know.
Yeah, not specifically. I wouldn't consider this necessarily quite the same as an actual job search, because we're not trying to hire them in any sort of permanent way. I think what we're looking at is trying to find, interested individuals that sort of have the experience we need, the availability, willing to work for what we can pay, those sort of things. So I think from the standpoint of some of the other broader themes that we generally, look for in hiring permanent staff, it's going to be a little tricky. I think the best bet is probably going to the professional organization of the state, looking for people who are retired that are looking for a little bit of augmentative income and interesting things to work on, because it will be that. That being said, I mean, that doesn't mean we discard all other aspects of how we think about and want and promote our hiring and that sort of thing. So I don't want to be dismissive of those other aspects, but it's probably less like an actual job search, the way, we won't probably have the opportunity really, or the need to post it, more broadly. But again, we'll see. I mean, it may depend. We may go to the professional organization, because again, we need them to be licensed in Massachusetts. That narrows the set pretty quickly. So we'll go to the professional organization first, and if they come with a whole lot of nothing, then we're going to have to go more extensively and more broadly in how we might approach finding someone to fill that in. So I think that may change over time. I'm hopeful that we can identify some highly qualified and interested candidates that have some proximity to where we are. That's another factor here, is that there is going to be some need to be here. So that's also a piece of the puzzle too. So there's a lot of constraints on the need that is going to limit us a little bit. So we'll have to, you know, sort of consider and factor all those things in as we go ahead.
I think it was Roger and then.
Yep. Well, my curiosity is, you used the collective "we." Who's going to interview this person?
So I think we've you know, sort of find you know, sort of viable candidates first and foremost. I think that, you know, as far as if we are in the fortunate circumstance of having multiple people that would be, you know, sort of satisfactory, then I think we sort of look at that question next and see if is there, you know, more than one, and if there are, which is fantastic if we're in that circumstance, you know, then we can you know, look at our normal process of how do we evaluate an interview and sort of decouples, you know, sort of I'm drawing a blank on the term, we were just talking about it earlier. There's a screening committee. Sorry, that's what I was looking for. I was looking search. I'm like, no, it's not search. Separate the screening from the interview. So yeah, we would do that if we are in a fortunate circumstance to have some multiple people that are interested.
Thank you.
Jennifer?
I have two things. The first is just again, in the first paragraph where it says the position can be performed both remote and on-site, like, you might want to clarify what that means. Do you mean both and, or do you mean either or? Do you mean if you could work remotely, you could work on-site, it could be hybrid, like that can be is it both and or either? Or I don't know, just clarify what you mean by that. And then, with the chair's permission, I wanted to ask Katie to say more about what you meant by adding a DEI statement.
In terms of looking for a large pool of candidates, you know, the statement that's generally put at the end of a job announcement, which says we're encouraging people who represent the, you know, people who are commonly less represented in such positions to apply. And I don't know if I can go next. I have another comment or question. And I'm not privy to, I have to excuse myself, but I'm not privy to what your responsibilities are, Doug, as interim. But I'm only thinking, as the director of finance, interim or not, it's a big position. And it's one thing if, and I'll use French teacher as an example, right? It's one thing if I have a substitute French teacher stepping in for me, that's one thing. But when we're dealing with the district's finances, and we've got these major projects going on, I don't want to. I want to make sure we do diligence to finding this person, knowing that you are busy with superintendent role, but perhaps there's information I might not know. Maybe you're 25% of your time on this and 75% on superintendent. But I do want to make sure that we don't overlook the gravity of this position. I mean, it's it's huge.
No, I think that, no, absolutely, that's not lost on me, and I think that that's part and parcel of why we'll lean on existing staff to carry some additional workload, and we may need to, as they take on those responsibilities, think about how we compensate them. So that gets back to Irv's question about sort of overall impact budget-wise. You know, if you ask folks to do things that are of a higher level of responsibility, which we probably will, of existing staff, they'll carry some of that burden. And there are certain, you know, sort of compulsory required things that you have to, you know, sort of sign and take ownership of, and that sort of thing, and that will be part and parcel of this person, their role and responsibility. And so you know, there's invariably in sort of the accounting and finance part of things, you know, you can't write the check and sign the check. You can either write the check or sign the check, but you can't do both. So that's why our treasurer role is separate from our accounts payable role. So, you know, those sorts of checks and balances will still have to be in place. I can't do some things because it's inappropriate for the superintendent to, you know, sign off on some things. So we need a second set of eyes on stuff. And so those are the, again, when, you know, in looking for someone with a level of experience that we're likely to be looking for, you know, they'll know what pieces they have to particularly own and be ultimately at a higher level of responsibility for. And then, you know, those that are not at that level are obviously, they may take some of them. We may have staff in the department do it. I may own some things here and there just because of there's an economy of time that is afforded because I know the answer quicker than anyone else. So all of those will be factors in the equation here.
well. Some of the questions I heard, I think were alluding to the HR process that we have in place, and whether this particular position will be going through that process, be subject to that process, or what parts of the process, the HR process, will impact this particular search.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, I think the difficulty just is sort of finding, in general, I mean, this is finding people with the right credential set is pretty difficult, sort of first and foremost. That being said, I think, we will, I will ask our HR department to, have a fidelity to the process that we've developed over the years to try to, in all our positions, to try to increase and be cognizant of the diversity and equity goals that we have as a district. So, if we have opportunity to continue to advance those things, we absolutely will, and we'll try to, accommodate and take into account and promote, those values that we hold true, and we'll definitely be, conscientious of that as a part of the process.
Right, and I appreciate that. I guess what I want to know, and I was thinking other people were asking the same question. What is going to be the hiring process here? Who's going to be involved in this hiring process? For instance, I was thinking in my mind when I saw this that, man, Doug needs this help. He should be the one making the decision on this. Is that going to be the way it's done, or is there going to be some other process?
So I think that a little bit to be determined. I think largely what will happen is our HR department will sort of try to reach out and make connections to sort of solicit some candidates, and then I think at that point, we'll see what numbers we're working with and what our options are and how to involve that, and certainly will I have a pretty strong opinion about what's involved? Absolutely. But at the same time, because I got to come to you guys with a recommendation, I have to feel confident in that. I have to be confident in the fact the person can deliver the needs that we have. But that doesn't exclude the fact that we want to bring other, sort of eyes to the process and the ability to sort of, take in other factors and consideration. So I don't mean to be, sort of vague here, but at the same time, I think, we'll start the process kind of like we do a lot of our process and sort of see what our candidate pool starts to look like, and then from there we'll try to follow our process that we usually do as best we can.
Right, because we're going to be signing off on this person.
That's right.
Or at least trying. So all of us on this committee want to be assured that there are processes in place that we've already vetted, i.e. our HR process.
Yep.
Their HR process has embedded in it the DEI requirements.
Mm-hmm.
So if we know those things, then our minds can be relieved. That's A, and then B, after all of that process is done, that you are bringing to us a candidate that who you feel is going to best fulfill this position. Right. We do not wish to, after signing off on this candidate, find out 10 days later that the person doesn't work out. Right. That comes back on you.
Right.
So we really want you to come back to us with something solid.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Were there any other questions before we move on? All right. So next is students' activities approval. Back to you, sir.
Speaking of things that were aspirational, I was hoping to have the list together. So just to give a little background on this, is recommended both by our auditors and general good practice to have all of our student activities that do any fundraising to be approved by the school committee. I didn't quite get the list fully together. There's another piece to this. We have some clubs that are less active and so are probably in a circumstance where they can be no longer considered active clubs, but they also have resources left over. So a given club ran for a period of time, it sort of faded, they might have $100. Well, or they might have $1,000, or they might have $2,000. And so that's student activity money. And the key thing to remember about student activities, it's money raised by students for their use. And generally it's the purpose of the the club or organization that they're doing, that they use that money for, but they can also do charitable gifts with that if they choose to. That's an expansion of the intention of student activities that was added a few years ago. And so, we've had clubs that have raised money for purchasing things to give to the Survival Center. That's a legitimate student activities. They get to choose how they spend that money. We also have, we'll have clubs on the list that may have no intention of ever raising money, but by virtue of getting approval to do so, then if something comes up, someone wants to donate particular money or gift that club certain, resources that help them do their work, they're able to do that, because technically without authority from you guys, they don't have the ability to do that. So we'll come back with the list refined. I was going through it today and trying to get it put together in a coherent way, and I realized I'm missing a few that I know about that I need to connect with our student activities clerical folks about a little bit, make sure I've got them all. For the new clubs, I'll have hopefully a little bit of a description about what their purpose and intent is, the mission of the group. Some of them are lofty, some of them are much more straightforward and I don't want to say simplistic, but more basic in their intention, and so we want a variety of opportunities for kids to explore interests and connect with each other in a lot of different ways. And so I just want to paint that picture for you. I was hoping to have a list tonight, but I will get that for our next meeting and have that ready to go so that those clubs have sort of full authority to do what they need to do in that regard.
Anna?
So the public comment about what sports are offered at the middle school, is that something that is determined at the superintendent level, or is that something that's determined at the school committee level? Or at the principal level?
Well,
Irving, you want to take that? I'll let you take that question.
Let me take the question in this way. We are a policy-making body. All right, that's number one.
Yeah.
We're a policy-making body.
The policy can say, we are going to have these sports offered at our school.
If the policy
Maybe.
states that the school system will have sports teams at A, B, C, D, at the middle school, et cetera, that is a policy of this school committee. All right, if that's a policy, then
he must implement it. Okay.
is responsible for carrying out that policy.
Yeah, the other thing I will say in general is that, and as you saw, sort of when I had fee structure, one of those critical pieces of that is what do we charge for athletics? What we charge versus other districts, how does it support and fund the program? It's augmentative to our program. We budget some money for that program. So as we talk about our budget conversation, that plays into, how much money is available for athletics and therefore what we offer as far as athletic programs for kids and how far, what grade levels and to what extent. The other thing that drives that is the number of kids that are interested, and so, interest is a piece. Can we get coaches as a piece? Is there money available to do it as a piece? So all of those are factors in it, but there are going to be critical conversations as we get into discussing fee structures, but then also budgets generally. So, more to come, as it were.
Yeah, in fee structures is always a incredible discussion because you have equity issues that come in that play into that.
Yeah.
And,
We haven't, just as an FYI, we really haven't adjusted any fees in the last several years since before the pandemic for a number of reasons. So we do need to make some adjustments to that. But that's part and parcel of, budget process and looking at those different, components of those extracurricular activities.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Track and field project update? Take it away, Doug, again.
So, yeah, a lot of updates tonight. But there's, we're trying to kind of keep some things moving along here. I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit, and I have to scroll. So first of all, this document, rather lengthy, 50 pages. The part you're probably most interested in, I doubt it's the insurance requirements that we need here. But if I can get to it quickly enough, hopefully. Okay. Services to be provided by the selected firm. So there are, what we've done here is, so we've had the, an ongoing conversation with the town of Amherst and with the committee in and around replacing our current track, making improvements to the field, interior of the track, and some of the surrounding fields nearby. What this step does in that process is to essentially seek a designer. It's more than that. I mean, there's like 4 phases here, but it's about sort of articulating the pieces of the work before you do the actual construction. And we've laid it out this way for a couple of reasons. One is because the site's got, some complications by virtue that we know going in. So the Tan Brook is culverted underneath the fields. We're looking to do a pretty significant reorientation of the track itself. There's it is near wetlands, that sort of thing. So all those factors that we're factoring into the nature of the project, and so we're sort of segmenting the design work to accommodate the project and the funding, and sort of see where we're at. So one of the things I've said to the school committee in past meetings is that it's likely that we're going to need a bit of an a la carte style of design, because it'll depend on the funding level. So like we have a certain amount of funding with CPA funds from the town of Amherst. We've got some debt authorization through our capital program here in the regional schools. So a few different things. There's potentially other sources through donation and fundraising that the boosters are doing. So it's a complicated funding structure, and it's not fully defined at the moment. But what we're going to try to do with this process is to begin getting those designs put in place, putting price tags on things in a more concrete way, and then figuring out as we get in and going through that process, what can we actually afford and what can we not afford and what can we do. And does that require us to do other action steps relative to, whether it be fundraising or debt authorization or whatever it happens to be. So what this does is it lays out the sort of first pieces and expectations of a essentially landscaping design and civil engineering that are in and around the project to get us to a place where we ultimately, if we can go through this full thing, we segment it so that if we need to stop at any point, we can. And sort of pause and reassess where we are, but the idea is that if we were to finish this in its entirety, we're at basically construction documents that can be bid for a construction company to come in and do the work, is where we'd like to ultimately end at the end of this process. But there'll be a lot of places along the way in these different component pieces where as we gain a greater level of understanding and understand sort of what those costs project out to be and evaluate the different choices that are available to us and all of that sort of stuff, there'll be opportunities for to report to you as a school committee, and then also to sort of continue to plan and adjust our plans accordingly.
Anna?
What all are you costing out? So like, I heard there was like a report that Peter Demling wrote some language into some stuff saying that the only thing that was going to be considered would be turf, and that then there was like another discussion about costs changing dramatically between when we started the conversation and now. And so I was just wondering, like, what different options are you going to have costed before you start making decisions and asking for bids?
So,
is that,
sorry? I'll just be very clear. You will make decisions. I'll make recommendations.
Right.
And so, but currently there is a debt authorization. So as a function of the regional school committee, you can and you will, and we do this almost every year, a certain amount of debt authorization. But in doing a debt authorization, you take action to approve a debt authorization. It has very particular language in it because you have to go to the state to borrow the money, or go through a state process to borrow the money. With that particular language, it constrains if you can or can't borrow, and it also dictates a little bit the project based on that language. Additionally, when you do a debt authorization, because we're a regional school district, the 4 towns are then sent notice immediately after for their ability, and they have essentially a right to refuse if they choose to. So we generally, any debt authorization we do as a cooperative process with the 4 towns, we try to time that up with Springtown meeting. Because we know you're gonna have a Springtown meeting because you have to have one. We can do a debt, we, meaning the regional school committee, could do a debt authorization anytime they'd like. You can do one tonight. Should be on the agenda, but I'm being a little cavalier here. But my point is that you can pick any time. It's a 60-day clock that starts once you do that, once they're notified at the towns. Well, technically a town can call a town meeting in that time frame. They usually don't because it's a terrible expense to take on for one issue. So, we try to work cooperatively with them to time it up with town meeting. Not explicitly required, but nonetheless, it's generally sort of good practice because we need to go and ask them for the ability to borrow money pretty much every year. We do that on a regular basis. So, and so when you do that authorization, like I said, if they take no action, it's automatically approved. It's sort of a pocket approval as opposed to a pocket veto. It's a pocket approval. But they can then, either affirm the vote or they can take it before their town meeting or in Amherst's case, the town council and decide to accept or reject it. A single town can say, no, we're not going to authorize that, and it kills that authorization. That's perfectly within their right to do. With the authorization that has been done for this project to date, school committee voted $1.5 million worth of borrowing specifically for this, and it was specified in that authorization for an artificial surface, reorientation of the track to a north-south orientation, the interior field being an artificial surface. And I forget what the other constraint was. Maybe was it 8-lane track? Yeah, I think it was an 8-lane track. So if we don't do those things, then we're going to have to rescind that authorization and approve a new authorization as part of the process, if that's the case. There may be a number of reasons why, it could be just there's not enough money to do it. That's going to be the biggest sort of constraint to us, and whether it's an artificial surface or a grass surface, interior to that, whether it's 8 lanes or not 8 lanes, et cetera, all going to be part of that conversation. Part of what we're going to ask these folks to do is to sort of lay that out. So if there's any change the school committee decides to make relative to that, or not, you'll have the ability to kind of make those determinations and make those choices as we go along. And I think I'll stop there. I could go into other things, but I think that sort of frames kind of the nature of this proposal. So we're requesting proposals from folks in the type of construction this is. We have posted this on the state, under certain circumstances and procurement rules, you have to do certain kinds of steps. There's a thing called the central register. There's a thing called goods and services, which are both state websites, basically, where you post the jobs. We are, in this circumstance, posting it under goods and services. It's not required to be under the central register. There's no cost to it. It's a matter of the formality of it. We're not, in this case, required to place an ad in the newspaper. Oftentimes we are. So when we were doing, and we just opened bids on it the other day for the middle school repairs to the roof that are kind of a stopgap till we can get a full roof replacement. Those we had to place an ad in the newspaper. There's very formal requirements around that. We also used a state site called Combuy, COMMBUYS.com, which is also another sort of mechanism to, sort of post these and make them public. So we did do that. I think it helps to potentially sort of get the word out that we're looking to do this kind of project. In this sort of project, we're able to use evaluation criteria to select. It's not purely a bid process that explicitly requires you to take the lowest bidder. It's framed differently and it's structured differently and the kind of work is different. So we have some flexibility to choose, the bidder based on criteria other than just price because of how we've structured it, which is helpful in this circumstance because there's a lot of need for flexibility here. So those are all part and parcel of this process, a little different than some other things. If we were, like I say, like on our roof project, it was much more scripted and structured. That was a request for quotes as opposed to a request for bids. Those are very different. But nonetheless, just the other thing I'll point out about this is, we posted this morning. It officially gets presented on the goods and services on Monday the 9th, which is a holiday, but they have depending on when you sort of put the stuff in, there's a lag between you do it and when it actually sort of becomes public. I think we missed it by like 2 minutes being like Wednesday this week versus next week kind of thing. So it, you know, they were, which is fine. That's not a material, we didn't change any other dates. But the bids are gonna be due on, I wanna say November 1st. It's in the document. November 1st, we'll do a bid opening. We'll go through those. Because it's an evaluative process, you know, sort of a qualifications-based thing and not just a pure price thing, will probably take us a little bit to go through all of those bids and kind of evaluate and rate those and you know, determine who exactly is the winner of the bid process. So, you know, it'll take a little bit, but the idea is that once we make that selection, we can get them started, and then they can, you know, we'll do a contract, and part of what makes this 50 pages is there's a sample contract in there, and, you know, a lot of boilerplate kind of things that are very particular and change a little bit depending on the different kinds of procurement you do. But nonetheless, we're hopeful that we get some interested parties, and they have some interesting things that they want to offer as how they might go about this, and we can kind of get started on this phase of it pretty soon.
Thank you. Jennifer?
So I'm sorry, I wasn't quite clear. Has this been posted already?
Yes. So it's on, so if you go to Combis, you would see it, because, you know, I click the button, it's there. It's not on the sort of, what's called goods and services, that sort of other location on the state until Monday. So that's probably the more official start date. It doesn't hurt to have it in advance, but we dated even though you could see it today on Combis, it says it's not really available to be, you know, dealt with until the 9th. So it formally is available for people to, you know, ask questions, solicit bid information, get packets of material, you know, those kind of things till Monday. I'm not sure,
That's
you know.
really common.
What's that?
It's really common.
Yeah, I mean, we could get it posted today. I wanted to get it, you know, up and make sure it was there, so we did. And, you know, we'll get going, and hopefully people will you'll be interested in the project. I mean, I think, you know, if you're a landscape architect, designer type person, I think it's a fascinating project. It's got a lot of interesting little wrinkles to it. And it's gonna have some, you know, it's a complicated one, you know, but hopefully we'll get some interested parties and we'll get some interesting proposals.
All right, any further questions? Okay, so our next
Sorry,
item.
I'm sorry, I have to leave early to tend to a family matter.
Okay. Hope everything is okay.
She is a teenager.
Me too.
I know.
So future agenda planning, so at this point, if there are items that people would like to see on the agenda, I have a running list, and we will do our best to get them on. Is there anything anyone would like to propose? Tillman?
I'll just say it officially, I've already told you that I would like to discuss the math curriculum at some point.
Yep, thank you. Anna?
Is it possible for the school committee to talk about the hiring process? Is that, can we make a policy about how the hiring process, I know that the hiring process changed several years ago, and I would like to revisit that conversation.
Yep, yes.
You can ask.
Currently, the hiring process is such that there's a screening committee, this is my understanding, there's a screening committee, and then there's an interview committee, and the CVs of the candidates are not passed on to the interview committee. And then the HR director has the right to insert candidates if they feel that the screening committee did not select a group of candidates that was diverse enough.
I think
Is that adequate, or did I accurately describe the hiring process?
I think we can have them come and do a presentation. That's happened before, so we can.
I think that it should be in two parts, not in terms of what we want it to be or what it should be, but what it is right now.
Yeah, there should be a presentation about what it is right now.
What it is right now, and then from there, there may be suggestions that the school committee might want to make to the HR in terms of improvement of the process.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Katie?
Along those lines, or maybe kind of, I'm curious as to where subcommittees are at this point. Like, is there a policy subcommittee? And someone mentioned the school equity task force, where things stand in that regard. Or have those been developed recently, or did you table it?
So I will tell you from last time, we went through the subcommittees to make sure we had a person on them if there wasn't someone on there. So I already have it on my list to bring back for next meeting so we can reallocate subcommittees.
So it's on the agenda.
Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you.
Can I ask you a quick, did we make a determination about who is the representative from the regional school committee to go to this special education parent advisory council? Because I was looking at the document, it said Stephen Sullivan, who's no longer on the committee for the first time in 15 years or whatever it was, but I don't know, did we pick somebody for that?
I
thought we did.
Thought we did.
Anybody recall who it
I
was?
think it's William.
I think it was you, yeah.
Okay, so if it was you.
William, I know it was you. It was you, William.
What?
It was you.
It was me, right?
Yeah, so the reason I ask is because there is a student, or a special education parent advisory council meeting tomorrow at 9? No, that's not right. Friday at 9. More importantly, I just want to make sure that we connect you and them.
I think I'm meeting you Friday at 9.
You are meeting me at 9, so won't be able to go to both, but they're virtual, but I want to make sure that they know that, because they meet monthly, once a month, but connecting you with their sort of executive group will be pretty important, so you can kind of get started and get going, and so I was thinking that you guys had picked somebody, and then I looked at the little sheet and I was like, wait, that's the same name, and it's like, okay. So I will pass that along to Dr. Brady, and she can make sure to connect you with the right people, and yeah, you'll be with me on Friday, so. Oh, see, you didn't handwritten there. That's the problem.
Yeah, because I can't
That's
update
okay.
it. I can share that.
And just one other thing, and just for you and there are all those subcommittees here for the region, and then the Amherst has subcommittees also.
So that's probably a good thing to talk about at your next Amherst meeting.
Oh, that's on the agenda.
Yeah.
Were there anything else? Yep, William?
I was just gonna say, could we have like, look at the policy of where the breakdown was for the LGBTQI issues that were occurring, and really look at the policy and see if our policies are addressing where the breakdowns were. I know that we're not gonna get, most likely, the Title IX report back, but I still think that as a school committee, we should really look at the policy and figure out where we can, I guess, hypothesize or think maybe there was a breakdown, but really make sure it's more ironclad and more protective for the kids. I feel like that's something that we need to dive into and look at, that we haven't done yet as a school committee. We haven't looked at any policy yet as far as where it could have been a breakdown, or maybe where we could see there is a breakdown, I don't know. And then could we have an update on, I guess, where the training that was given to the children or the kids for the LGBTQI in the beginning, and the training that was given to the staff? Can we have a copy of what that training was as a school committee members? As far as like what the curriculum looked like and what the curriculum is for those trainings? And then also if we could have an update on the pronoun registry or the pronoun sheet that they were having to do, like could we get an update on how many, I guess we didn't say that, but like just an update on that and how that pronoun sheet is working, or the Google Doc, whatever it is. And then could we get an update regularly from the superintendent about how many bullying cases we're having in the schools, so that we have raised, we have an alertness of what's going on. In general, I think, really, could we have a report somewhat of, this is how the kids are feeling. These are the number of kids that have stepped up and asked for help. I don't know how we could maybe look at that, but some kind of a policy around reporting back to us the status of the bullying incidents is in school.
Okay.
Sorry.
Nope, Gabriella.
William's comment about, it seems like we're not going to get the Title IX information. I would like to know if we can have a discussion about our ability to see the Title IX reports and any information, because if we are going to be making policy about the breakdown of procedures, then I think it would be very important for us to have as much information as possible about all of the, everything that happened, so that we can make informed policy to address that for the future. So, in short, what I'm trying to say is I'd like us to have a discussion about being able to see the Title IX reports and then being able to use that information for making policy.
Okay, thank you. Was there anything else before?
Just clear, and I want to back up on, we won't be able to see all of the Title IX report, especially that relates to personnel. However, the parts that we will be able to see and look at and to ask questions about will give us the ability to determine where the breakdowns happen. I mean, managerial infrastructure, administrative procedures, etc. Just looking at it, we know that obviously there were some breakdowns. We just need to know that those breakdowns have been identified and communicated back to the administration, and that we know, policy-wise, whether our policies are sufficient. Right.
All right. Anything else? All right. So, Irv, you are up, sir.
Yes.
Warrant reports.
All right, I, Irv Rhodes, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $412,965.78. This was on the 22nd of 2023, and that's when I signed it. The other one is.
Can we not get what the money was for in the report, or is it just, normally you just say, I paid this much money
Right.
on this date?
Right, right.
Then how are we accepting to say, yes, we approve that payment?
You don't know.
You just, this is just
I've
a report of
approved
it?
it.
Oh, hold on. I think
Sorry.
Doug is going to be a better answer for that question.
So, the long story short is this: as school committee, you are compelled to formally authorize all payments by the district, both payroll and accounts payable. Traditionally, previous to the Municipal Modernization Act, we'd have a quorum of the committee come into the office and physically sign the document. And if you want to go through one of the warrants, I can tell you they're rather lengthy. I mean, Irv's looked at plenty of these. But nonetheless, and so with Municipal Modernization Act, they allowed us to delegate that to an individual who then has the ability to review the particulars. When they report out, they're just, sort of giving you the short Cliff Notes version. You are welcome as committee members, if you have questions about any particular thing, to come to our office, the business office, and review the warrants in detail if you would like. We do have to be a little careful, not so much that you see it, but part of why we don't put the whole thing out is because it will often contain student information or sensitive information, so we want to be conscientious of that, and it takes a while to truly redact everything is time not well spent for staff.
Yeah,
to be
I was
short.
thinking more like salaries, or like very broad
Right.
categories of what this was for building expenses, this was for salaries, this was for repairs, this was for something, but just to say $412,000.
Right. All right.
Okay.
Yeah,
Just kind of like weird
you're
to
100%
hear
correct
that. Yeah, okay.
on that. And if I had assumed that the top line number, that which I signed for. However, there have been people who read the warrants, who read all of the subcategories in it, and that. If this committee wants me to do that, I'll be more than happy to do it. And because I will only be doing it until the end of December. So in which case I will then be off of this hook. And some other poor person who didn't know what they were getting into, like I did, will be subject to it. So however, if it's the committee's pleasure, I will be more than happy to do a complete breakdown, because some of them do have a breakdown with the subcategories.
I don't want subcategories, I just want like a 2-word description of what the money was for.
Well, that's what they
That's
are.
what they are.
That's what they are, yeah.
Okay.
They're just like,
You know, this
But
much.
he didn't
went
read
to-
that, he just said the amount and the date, and if you could give me also a
Right.
2-word description, that would be awesome.
All right, if that's the wish of the committee, the next time I report,
anybody-
I'll go through
Yeah,
the
cool, okay.
entire thing, all right?
All right, no, no,
No,
no.
no.
Just 2 words of description would be super awesome.
Tell me.
It's some or nothing.
Is it fair to say that one of those amounts contains multiple subcategories?
Yes, that's true.
Right, so the 400, whatever, breaks down into many.
But there's no actual top category?
So, if I may, the other thing I will share with you is that
It's not
this
worth it.
report that he's reading are attached in the non-public part of Board Docs. So if you actually log into Board Docs, you can see the warrant report with the details. So we generally break it down into the sort of
They allow
funds,
me if-
general fund, regular, revolving funds, grant funds, other funds which are like gifts and that
All
sort of
right,
thing.
if that's of interest,
Okay, if it's,
I mean, I can go through that.
It's
if
fine.
if it's of interest, but if it's, I can do it.
Gabriella?
I was looking at the document, and I am fine with the degree of detail that's already in here. My bigger question is, the number that's in here is the top number doesn't match up with what I think you said verbally.
With what?
This number is 333,000.
Wait a minute, I haven't gotten to that one yet.
There are several.
Oh. Sorry.
Yes, I haven't.
That's the only one that seems to be attached.
Yeah.
No.
Others may have been attached to previous agendas.
Which one did
You
I
may not
already
have read that
read?
one, so.
You only read one, 400 and.
all right,
I read the,
how is it? It's fine.
300 one. All right, so, just as an example, so, hire of roads authorized by my signature, an amount of $855,132.68 dated, the 4th of October, 2023. I signed it on the 3rd. The subcategories are that there was a state wages and federal wages of $708,936. What else did I authorize? And state, federal liability, federal liability state of $37,868. It really,
I think if you just read what's listed
right.
on there.
That's why I want to read. I want to read this. So, if you're again, I don't want we can take.
I get it now.
You got it.
No,
All
it's
right.
fine.
All
I
right.
just wanted
So,
to,
all right.
there is not really a good overall category to describe it, and it's too onerous to describe
Right.
all the subcategories. That's
All
fine.
right.
We can read it.
This is actually the last. The IRV was authorized by my signature to in the amount of $855,132.68, and that one I already read. And the other one was, I just want to make sure, is $332,017.61. There were 5 of them all together. And by the way, the next time, all of these should be available on Board Docs. All right, it should be all of them. When the agenda is formed and it says warrant reports, it should also include those warrants right on there. And it didn't happen this time, but next time it will.
Moving on. Oh, I'm sorry, did you have a
No, I
question?
just wanted to clarify, because you signed it today.
One of my signed today.
Yeah, so would that be on, I guess that's why it's not on Board Docs.
Yeah, one wasn't on, I don't know how many were on Board Docs. I couldn't find any, when I checked today, because I made a note of that they weren't on Board Docs. but they should be on board docs. Anytime there is an agenda item and it says warrant report, then it automatically should come up what those warrants are. So when I'm reading them, you can read them right along with me.
But the 48-hour rule in terms, it's an agenda item, but the specifics of the agenda item don't have to be 48 hours in advance.
Just has to be it just has to say warrant report.
Got it, thank you.
Next is, accept gift. Ooh, and it looks like we have one.
I can give a little background on this to start with.
Oh, great.
So it says potential gift here. I think that's undersells it a little bit. I think that the total value is what's potential. I think the fact that the person has made the donation is clear. I think there's one of the things in our policy around gift giving is that they can choose to be anonymous. They've chosen to be anonymous. They happen to be an alumni of our high school. They've had an opportunity to sort of give back to the district. They have very specific things they would like us to invest in. So, they want to invest in things that the kids get to use. So that's why it says 3D printer, electronics test equipment, STEM items, et cetera. So science and engineering type of things. And they've expressly, stated that they don't want to do things like travel and food, and that's where some gifts are more broadly like, oh, you can go to professional development, which means you got to eat and you got to get there, and this is much more about buy stuff that goes in the classroom that gets used by students. So they put those constraints on it. So when we ask people to donate, we ask them to give us any kind of constraints they want on it. That's why it's listed the way it is. This one's a little different because it has up to $25,000. That's the maximum amount that is available to us. But it is around sort of meeting those requirements of the support from those folks. So that's the main thing there. We're very thankful to our donor in this circumstance, in all circumstances, but in this circumstance for their willingness to share this with us. And just by process for folks that are newer, anytime we do one of these, we do send a thank you letter. It also can qualify if people are itemizing their taxes and need to be able to put it on their taxes. It's a qualified form for that. But we send at a minimum just a general thank you letter that from our treasurer that specifically states the gratitude of the district with regard to that.
I move to accept the gift of $25,000 to the Amherst Regional High School Engineering Department.
Second.
Second.
All right, yep, Tillman?
No, you just started saying.
Tillman's ready to go.
He's going to adjourn already.
He's ready. Yeah, all in favor, accepting this lovely gift. Excellent. All in favor? Thank you, Anonymous, so much. This is fabulous and amazing. Now, Tillman, did you have something you wanted to?
No, I wanted to vote for the.
Oh, great. So,
Joking.
apologies. So, our next item is to adjourn.
That.
Yeah, Tillman, there you
Motion
go.
to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, there you go, you got that
Moved
one.
by Tillman, seconded by Anna.
What time is it?
All in favor? You're not in favor?
I'm in
All right,
favor.
we're all adjourned. Thank you.
What was incredible?
Oh, your bag's in there.
Yes, thank you.
Text messages come up on my watch.
No, you're a person of many good qualities.
Oh, you're welcome.
I have two questions.
I've gotten in the habit of bringing more than one because
You
I
have
think
your
it's-
computer?